Can anyone help me? I'm on a bus that won't stop, and I don't know where I am. Part 1. I'll admit it, I'm a complete idiot. I fell asleep on the bus like a fool, and now I have no idea where I am. I honestly, truly don't know where the hell I am. I fumbled in my pocket for my phone. 17% battery, probably enough. I tried to open Google Maps, or at least I tried. My finger impatiently tapped the screen as the bus gently rumbled, speeding through some unfamiliar part of the city. Maybe it wasn't even the city I started in. How long had I been asleep? Then, for the first time, I noticed the time displayed at the top of my phone. Oh my God, I'd slept for over an hour. What in the world made me so stupid? I decided to skip maps and go straight to my contacts. As I scrolled to my mom's number, the battery dropped to 16%. I pressed call and brought the phone to my ear. It beeped once, then buzzed, then went silent. I didn't even know if my mom had picked up. I tried a second time, but it seemed the call didn't connect at all. My heart began to race. I was starting to panic. I glanced around the bus. I've never been the confident type of girl. Just thinking about having to admit my stupidity and that I'd got myself lost made me shiver. Yes, even in front of strangers, it was embarrassing. If you're an introvert, did I use the right word, introvert? Then you'll understand this feeling. I was acutely aware of my pitiful state, but I hated striking up conversations with strangers, and I hated even more having to admit I was wrong mid-conversation. There were 3 other people on the bus, not counting the driver. A young girl, probably just a few years older than me in her early 20s, sitting at the very back. Then, a man with his daughter sitting a few rows ahead. Both were silently tense. I didn't want to talk to them. They gave off a very strange vibe, and the mere thought of waking someone up truly freaked me out. So I stayed in my seat, shifting uncomfortably. I looked out the window, where blurry scenes flashed by. I prayed, hoped, wished I would see a familiar statue or landmark. Just something, a street name or anything I could recognize to find my way home. But there was nothing. Only dirty, dilapidated walls of decaying buildings, makeshift tents pitched along the sidewalks under flickering streetlights. The longer I waited, the worse it got, but I didn't dare move. I just kept looking out, watching the sun slowly set in the distance. The pale red twilight cast a gloomy hue over the outside world, making me realize I had no other choice. Yes, calm down. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. I have to talk to the driver, just ask where we are. Will the bus go back to its old route? Go on, go. It took me about 5 minutes to rehearse what I would say in my head. Then, I took a deep breath, stood up, my body moving stiffly. I walked into the aisle, heading forward, my heart pounding. Approaching the driver, I subtly cleared my throat. "Excuse me," I began. "I'm sorry to bother you." The driver cut me off with a grunt and tapped a sign next to the steering wheel. It clearly read, "Do not talk to the driver." I stammered but tried to continue. "I have to, I'm sorry, but I don't know where I am. I missed my stop. Will we go back?" Another, louder grunt, and the driver rapped his knuckles on the sign more forcefully. I froze. I hadn't expected this kind of reaction. After another long silence, during which he didn't even bother to take his eyes off the road, the driver grabbed a glossy bus schedule from the left shelf and slammed it onto the counter next to the steering wheel. I mumbled a thank you, took the paper, and returned to my seat, feeling utterly humiliated. As I walked past the young girl and the man, I waited for something to compel me to lift my eyes from the floor, and I did. My eyes met the girl's. She was about my age and looked terrified. The man stared straight ahead. He didn't even resemble her father, to be frank, and his hand rested on her thigh. All my anxieties about the driver suddenly vanished, replaced by a deeper, more pervasive dread. I tried to reassure myself, to rationalize what I'd just seen as I returned to my seat, but I couldn't. I had a feeling the girl was in danger, and now that I was the only one who seemed to notice, it felt like the responsibility to prevent something terrible was falling on me. The rhythm of my heart doubled in my chest. I buried my face in my hands. I ran my hands through my hair, trying to ignore what I had seen. I focused on the glossy schedule. I didn't recognize any of the landmarks or stops. The place where I'd boarded the bus wasn't even listed. I stuffed it away and turned to the window. My legs were shaking, and I glanced down the aisle at those two. He was sitting closer to her now, or was I just imagining it? Oh my God. Oh no. What do I do? What if I'm wrong? If I misread the situation and make a huge mess, I'll die of embarrassment. But time wouldn't wait for me. I pictured myself in the future, watching the news, an image of a girl harmed, with some tragic headlines scrolling across the screen. My hands gripped my knees. I had a terrible premonition that something horrific was about to happen if I just let it be. I tried to put myself in her shoes. If I were being harassed, if I felt threatened, I'd want someone to do something. Anything. That was the answer that came to mind. I'd want them to do anything. So before I could panic myself again, I sprang to my feet. It felt like all the blood was draining from my body, but instead, adrenaline surged through my veins. I rushed into the aisle, stepping closer. I called out, my voice much louder than intended, "Excuse me." The man still faced forward, but the girl turned to look at me. "Are you okay?" I asked her, and she shook her head. "Driver," I yelled towards the front of the bus. "There's a girl in trouble on your bus. She's in danger." The man next to her jumped from his seat, spinning around to face me. Now I saw him much more clearly. Indeed, he bore no resemblance to the girl, but what chilled me most were his eyes. They were emotionless, dull, like a shark's, staring right through me into nothingness. The air on the bus felt suffocatingly tense. I almost held my breath. He seemed to realize he'd made a big mistake by drawing attention to himself, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he was about to lunge at me. Gathering all my courage, I raised a trembling arm, pointing an accusatory finger at him. Don't come any closer. Stay away from her," I warned, my voice almost failing. What happened next was truly bizarre, but perhaps due to the intense stress, I didn't fully process it until it was all over. The driver, without a word and without stopping the bus, suddenly stood up with surprising agility. He emotionlessly walked down the aisle and, without ceremony, grabbed the man from behind, clamping his hand tightly. The predator roared in anger, struggling, but the driver, despite looking smaller, showed no effort. He dragged the struggling man towards the bus door, pulled the lever to open it, and to my astonishment, threw him onto the road. He flung him out of the moving vehicle. Then, he returned to his driver's seat, the door hissed shut, and he resumed driving as if nothing had happened. I stood there for another minute, though honestly, I don't know how much time passed, until I staggered back to my seat, my mind reeling. No sooner had I sat down than the girl immediately sprang up and rushed to the empty seat beside me, looking incredibly relieved. She hugged me tightly. "Oh my God," she whispered. Thank you so much." I hugged her back, my heart slowly calming. "It's okay. Honestly, I'm shaking too. God, I've never done anything like that in my life." "Oh, but I'm glad you did," she replied, pulling away and smiling faintly at me. "He just appeared out of nowhere. I fell asleep for a bit, I know, stupid, but when I woke up he was right next to me. So many empty seats and he chose that one. I didn't know what to do. I felt paralyzed. Did you fall asleep too?" I asked, frowning. I glanced towards the back of the bus. Despite all the commotion, the other young girl I'd noticed was still asleep. Completely undisturbed, she'd slept through the whole thing. Something was very strange. I fell asleep too. I never usually sleep in public. When I woke up, it was dark everywhere outside the window. I really was lost. "Honestly, me too," she said, staring at me. "What is happening? You saw it. The driver just dragged that guy out and threw him off a moving bus. Isn't that completely illogical?" "I know," I paused. "I know." We exchanged glances, some of the tension in the air eased. Yes, nice to meet you." "I'm Lee," she replied, a forced smile on her face, still looking quite worried. "And who wouldn't be in this situation, right? If only my brother were here. Ryan, he's a year younger than me but very smart, especially when it comes to navigating everyday life. He'd definitely know what to do. Oh, I hope he's okay. Last time I spoke to him, I said some pretty nasty things." A vague fear that I might never see him again flashed through me, chilling me to the bone. If he were here, he'd handle this much better than I would. I've never been good at communicating with people. I was even embarrassed, wondering if I was being awkward with Lee. I hoped not. I don't have many friends. But I couldn't let myself be distracted. I needed a plan. I needed to think like Ryan would. The bus has to stop somewhere, right?" I asked Lee. "It has to reach a final stop or a station or something. Then we can transfer to another bus or take a taxi home. I don't have money, but maybe enough for a short ride." Lee asked where I lived. I told her, and she excitedly said she actually lived just 2 blocks away. We chatted for a bit, bonding, but our conversation was cut short as the bus suddenly plunged into a tunnel carved into a nearby hillside. Initially, the tunnel seemed normal, speckled yellow lights on the ceiling flashing past, casting a soft, sweeping yellow light across the windows and seats in a rhythmic pattern. But then the lights began to die out. Lee and I fell silent, watching through the window. The lights extinguished, one by one, until only pitch blackness surrounded us. The bus still sped along, not slowing down, but outside the window there was absolute darkness. The engine roared, I could feel it under my feet, and my heart hammered. We continued to hurtle through the dark. What in the world is happening? Where are we going? Lee whispered, but of course I had no idea. I knew nothing at all, and I don't think I could have uttered a word right then, even if I had something to say. All my efforts were focused on suppressing the panic that threatened to erupt. It was like a pounding drum in my head, threatening to make me collapse. I couldn't gauge how fast we were going, only that we were definitely still hurtling forward, thanks to the rattling roar of the bus engine beneath my feet. Wait, I murmured to Lee. Look, there's a light ahead. And sure enough, a small dot of light appeared far in the distance, then rushed towards us, growing larger and larger. It was actually growing faster than the bus's speed. It felt like something huge and blinding was hurtling towards us in the absolute darkness of the tunnel. The light was terribly dazzling. I flinched, shutting my eyes tightly, partly due to my light sensitivity, partly from reflex. Even with my eyes closed, I could feel the bus exiting the tunnel, as a gloomy orange light suddenly enveloped us. The bus continued to roar, and Lee grabbed my sleeve. Yes, she said urgently. Yes, look. Hesitantly, I opened my eyes and let out a gasp of horror. If the place I'd seen before was strange, it was nothing compared to this sight. A dark, desolate, scorched land stretched far to the horizon. Gray as dust across the ground were concrete ruins and rusted iron skeletons of bizarre buildings that seemed to have long dissolved into the wind. I turned my head to look through the rear window, seeing the tunnel receding. It turned out to be a tunnel mouth protruding from the base of a jagged black mountain. Oh my God, I muttered. This is. I couldn't find the words, couldn't name this place. The sky was orange like twilight, but if I wasn't mistaken, the shadows on the desolate fields didn't seem to match the sun's position. A gloomy red orb hung above black mountain ranges in the distance, and over there, at the very edge of the horizon, something was moving, something huge and alien. I couldn't make out the details, but it moved slowly on 4 seemingly mechanical legs, each step heavy. I knew what I had to do now. Part 2. I stood frozen, horrified and astonished, staring at the colossal mechanical monster lumbering across the orange-tinged horizon amidst the arid, gray, eerily flat wasteland and the broken remnants of some fallen structures, jagged rocks here and there. It was hard to guess exactly how big that monster was or how far it was from us. Ahead, the road stretched straight, cutting through the dusty gray wilderness. I squinted, but saw no turns. It just went on endlessly, disappearing at some distant point in the infinite wasteland. I sank back into my seat. If I had a sense of humor and enough confidence, I might have blurted out, "I don't think we're in Kansas anymore." Would that be funny? Maybe, but I decided to keep it to myself. What do we do now? I mumbled instead of a joke, looking at Lee. She was glancing over my shoulder, towards the young girl still asleep at the back of the bus. Do you think we should wake her up? She asked. I looked in the direction Lee had indicated. A strange fear, which under normal circumstances would surely be irrational, suddenly gripped my mind. What if we're in her dream? I asked. I mean, what if all of this only exists in her head? And if we wake her up, what if we just disappear? Lee didn't answer. I turned to see her looking at me with one eyebrow raised, which made me blush. Well, I'm not sure, I tried to justify. Everything's so crazy, isn't it? It's just a theory. No, all right, I get it, Lee replied. She seemed to be trying to be agreeable, but I understood well enough that I'd just said something silly. The bus engine continued to hum. The bus shook as it hit a pothole or a crack in the road, sending a rumbling tremor from front to back. The other young girl was still fast asleep. Do you think we'd even be able to wake her? I asked Lee. She shrugged. If she doesn't wake up, we'll have to protect her. Do you have a magnet? No, I replied instinctively, then paused. Wait, what, Lee? What did you just say? We have to protect her. Lee suddenly looked worried. I felt a vague tension spontaneously arise between us, something I hadn't noticed before. The desolate landscape continued to blur past outside the window. I mean, like how you protected me, Lee said, just in case something happens. Suddenly, I wasn't so sure about this girl anymore. A magnet? You just asked me if I had a magnet. Why would I have a magnet? Lee bit her lip, saying nothing more, but looked at me apologetically. Lee, I said, my voice filled with confusion and fear. Do you know something I don't? Do you know what the hell is going on here? Lee was silent for a long moment. Finally, she nodded, looking reluctant. Yes, she whispered. A little, please don't hate me, I only heard a few things. Heard a few things? What's going on? I asked, louder than intended. Why are we here? How did I get here? You have to be registered, Lee said softly. I think someone actually registered you for this bus ride. Registered me? I repeated, trying to process the information. Who would? Who would do something so malicious? Who would come up with such a bizarre game? But thinking it over, I realized the list of suspects wasn't actually short. At school, kids didn't like me much, and I wasn't sure why. I'd transferred from somewhere else, had no fixed friend group, which was probably part of it. How many times had I stood in front of a mirror, staring for a long time, trying to see what was so different about me but never understanding? Forget it. There was a girl named Courtney. She loved to bully me. I couldn't understand how someone could enjoy making others miserable. Just thinking about her made my blood boil. Did she do this? Could Courtney have signed me up for this crazy thing? But how would she even know such things existed? Probably not, right? A barrage of questions followed. Where are we, Lee? I could only ask that now, tears welling up. I'm scared, okay? I hate all of this. I hate everything. I don't know, Lee replied. Please don't hate me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. It's not your fault, I said. Suddenly, a sharp screech echoed from the front of the bus, like an alarm bell. We both flinched, turning our heads to look up. Above the top seat, near the windshield, an orange light flashed, casting an eerie glow within the already vivid orange space. My heart sank as I heard a voice booming over the bus's speakers. Lee looked at me, her brow furrowed in confusion, but I couldn't decipher the words any better than she could. It was just distorted, broken static, like a subway announcement in New York, but 10 times harder to understand. Maybe it had been clear before, but now it was just distorted, unsettling fragments of noise. I thought I vaguely heard the word, test. Test, I told Lee, but that was the only word I caught. The voice cut off abruptly, leaving only the droning bus engine. The light flickered, then went out. We sat in silence for a minute or two. I was about to offer my first hypothesis when I caught a glimpse of something flashing somewhere in the desolation outside. I flinched, leaning out of my seat, turning to my left, staring out at the strange world. I saw it again. A shadow, shivering, slithering quickly from a rock formation to a ruined structure. Did you see that? I asked her, alarmed. On the other side of the road, too, she said, her voice trembling with anxiety. There are several shadows. Here, too, more shadows. I saw them. Silent shadows, moving so fast I couldn't squint to get a good look. They leaped from one place to another, then sped across the eerie wilderness, the dark, endless fields stretching in all directions. Lee, I began, my voice rising. Earlier, you mentioned magnets, right? You said magnets. Yes, she replied. I could hear the fear underlying her words. Lee continuously looked from one window to the other, slowly pulling herself away from the glass. Why would I need a magnet? I asked, my heart sinking with premonition for the answer. Because they say, Lee whispered, they interfere with the machines. And right after that, a piercing screech echoed, accompanied by a metallic crash from the edge of the desolate road. One of the shadows leaped up, slamming violently into the nearest window. Both Lee and I screamed in panic, recoiling, our eyes wide with dread. Then another one hurled itself against the right window. I only caught a fleeting glimpse, a bit clearer than the first. A tangled mess of springs, gears, rusted metal shards, and old, cracked pistons. What the hell is this? Oh my God, Lee muttered, her eyes darting between the windows. It looks like, those are them, they're them. Another shadow shot from the roadside, latching onto the front of the bus, creating a grating metallic sound. This was when I saw it most clearly through the dirty, dusty windshield. In truth, a part of me wished I hadn't seen anything. I felt the blood drain from my body. I let out a choked, terrified gasp, staggering as the bus lurched, hitting another crack in the road. From head to body, the creature looked like a rusty iron humanoid, as if someone had hastily pieced it together from the scrap of a horrific accident. A body littered with metal shards, iron chains, mismatched parts. Its face was blank, with only a deep black hole in the center, revealing swirling, grinding gears. From its waist down, it split into 6 legs that looked like crab claws or giant spider legs. It shrieked, then began to pound its rusty fists against the glass, occasionally twisting its 6 legs to grip tighter. "Oh my God, Lee, what do we do?" She was almost frantic. She jumped into the aisle, then spun around to look behind me. From behind, I heard something slam against the rear window, shaking the entire bus. "All right, damn it, there's a fire extinguisher in that glass box at the back of the bus. Get it, we can fight back, we'll be okay," Lee yelled, simultaneously lunging to smash a narrow window, blocking a horrifying mechanical arm trying to reach inside. I ran to the back of the bus, trying not to look at the machines that were relentlessly attacking, causing the bus to lean from side to side. Most of them hit the bus and bounced off, some cracked the glass, and a few that managed to cling on shrieked through the windows, pounding against the sides of the bus. It was all insane. The world around us was already terrifying, but I still felt a strange thrill as I used my elbow to shatter the protective glass and grab the fire extinguisher. This was clearly something few people would ever imagine doing, but here I was doing it. It wasn't very big, but it was heavier than it looked. I strained to pull it from its rack, clutching it in my hands, just in time as a machine smashed the rear side window. Glass rained down, and an arm reached in. "Get out," I screamed, swinging the fire extinguisher directly forward. The metal arm and forearm dented, sparking as I repeatedly struck it. Electricity surged through my body. I kept hitting, teeth clenched, sweat trickling down my back. I shoved the extinguisher into the metal creature's head, sending it reeling back into the seat, and then with one final, mighty blow, I knocked it out of the bus. As it fell, its remaining arm flailed wildly but missed, and the creature vanished from the window, thudding onto the road, even as the bus continued to hurtle through the desolate, eerie landscape. I turned back to the front of the bus. Lee was clinging to 2 seats, kicking continuously at a machine trying to climb through a hole in the floor where someone or something had torn it open. I rushed past her, straight to the front of the bus. "Driver," I yelled, no longer timid as before. The bus, we're..." But I didn't even know what to say. How could I say it? He just kept driving, driving, driving. Before I could react, a metal arm suddenly broke through the driver's side window, reaching in and grabbing the steering wheel. But this time, the driver reacted. He fought back, completely cold, with the same inexplicable strength as before. He tore the monster's arm from its joint in a flurry of sparks, letting the creature fall away, crushed by the wheels beneath. The driver let the severed limb clatter to the floor right next to my feet. He didn't even glance away from the road. I unconsciously looked down at his hands. Some of the skin on the driver's hand was torn from the struggle, but there was no blood. And why would there be blood? Because beneath his skin were only wires and cold, gleaming metal. A spark shot from his mechanical finger joint, then a second, a third. "All right," I muttered aloud, feeling my worldview crumble, forcing me to adapt to this absurd reality. "All right, damn it." "Yes," Lee screamed, making me turn. "There's blood in the aisle. Oh my God, is that my blood? Am I bleeding?" "The other girl, protect her." A chilling panic rose from my stomach, spreading through my limbs. Lee was right. Of course. The other girl was completely unprotected, sitting alone, fast asleep at the back of the bus. The orange light from outside hadn't even had time to illuminate her hair before it was blocked by a mechanical creature that had just jumped onto the back of the bus. This one had eyes, 2 dull, cracked, bulging lights on its iron head. They flickered greasily, sweeping around the bus, then stopped at the young girl. "Yes, Lee, pull her out quickly." I really tried. Still clutching the fire extinguisher, I rushed down the aisle, trying to shield my face from the flying broken glass, reaching towards her. "Wait," I screamed. "Stop!" But my cries went unanswered. I lunged for the girl's seat, but it was too late. I could only watch in horror as she was snatched up by the machine, held tightly in its steel embrace. The monster immediately detached itself from the bus, landing with a thud that kicked up a cloud of dust on the cracked, endless road. It lifted its head, looking at me with its broken lamp eyes, and as the bus stubbornly rolled further away, those two figures were just fading traces, disappearing into the distant, vivid orange twilight. Part 3. As the mechanical creature became smaller and smaller, fading into the distance, I could still see it, clutching the sleeping girl in its arms. Its lamp eyes finally left mine, and it vanished with its prize into the darkness of the wasteland. I slowly turned, looking down the bus aisle, helpless and dismayed. Lee let out a growl, using the severed arm of a machine she'd just ripped apart to knock another one out of a broken window. That machine didn't bother to cling on, and one by one, all of them the ones still clinging to the roof and sides of the bus retreated automatically. They let go, their shadows briefly flickering through the cabin before landing on the dusty road with soft thuds. Then they stood there silently, watching the bus continue to roll. When I was sure the attackers had given up, I allowed myself to collapse into a seat, utterly exhausted. Lee did the same. I tried to take a deep breath. "They took her," I said softly, exhaling. "Yeah," Lee replied, her voice tinged with sadness. "It's not your fault." "No, it's not," I answered. "It's not your fault, I'm sorry too." "No, I'm sorry for everything," she finally said. "I'm sorry if you thought I was hiding something. I really didn't expect any of this to be real until we went through that tunnel and saw this wasteland." She suddenly fell silent, and I turned to look at her. "So what do you know, Lee? Tell me everything. What made you think these terrible things would happen?" She sighed softly. "I don't know anything about where we are but this bus. A friend found a whole forum about it. We spent an entire afternoon just reading the posts. Then I asked her to sign me up through some glitchy, joke-like application link just to see what would happen. This was 3 days ago." "What did it say?" I asked. Lee shrugged, then looked at her arm. She had some scratches, but no blood. That detail made me glance down at my own leg. There was a cut, and I shivered. She pressed her hand against it to stop the bleeding. "It said this bus was a way to travel between." I waited for her to continue, but nothing. "Between what?" Lee shrugged again. It wasn't very clear. The posts were full of weird abbreviations and strange, hard-to-decipher phrases. They said it used to be better, that it's not safe anymore, that the owners or operators, I'm not sure what they called them, had abandoned the project. I don't know why. "Oh my God," I just exclaimed in frustration. "Everything is so crazy." Darkness fell across Lee's face as the bus passed, the orange glow from the sky reflecting brightly on her hair. Lee looked both embarrassed and remorseful. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "It's okay," I replied, feeling a pang of guilt myself. "You have nothing to apologize for. Really, you just read an online forum, that's not a crime. And besides, you didn't even know me. I was nothing to you." "To me, you're not nothing," she said. She smiled at me, and I smiled back. My hair gently rustled in the wind that now streamed through the holes in the windows. Then, something sparkling ahead of the bus caught my eye. The surrounding area seemed to be slowly changing. The old road still stretched endlessly, but the scattered ruins and building fragments were noticeably thinning out. The dazzling light outside the window made me shield my eyes, and suddenly I realized what was shining. The scorched, gray strips of land were gradually being replaced by large, gently rippling pools of water. I called it water, but in truth, I wasn't sure. It could have been oil as it reflected the sky's orange light, the liquid mixing strange pink and yellow hues with deep black masses. None of the pools touched the road. They just covered the barren surface far to both sides, and as we watched, these masses of liquid grew wider and wider. They were deeper, judging by the darkening color of the water's depths, but it was hard to guess the true depth. The dark lake stretched across the gray dust, expanding and merging as the bus continued along the road. And then, the wasteland completely disappeared, leaving only that strange, flat, shimmering water stretching to the horizon of vast ocean and a single road. "You didn't read anything about this on the forum, did you?" I asked Lee, but received the expected answer. "No," she shook her head, looking worriedly out the windows. "They didn't mention anything at all." We fell silent for a while. The bus still followed the only path. I still can't believe that girl was taken, I finally said, thinking about the sleeping person who had been snatched from her seat. I know, but we tried, Lee replied, her eyes meeting mine, seemingly asking the same question. Did we really do our best? Do you think she'll be okay? I asked. Lee turned away, avoiding my gaze. Probably, her voice sounded, doubt clearly present. We both flinched as a familiar sound suddenly cut through the engine's drone, that sharp, piercing beep from the front of the bus, near the windshield. The orange light flashed again, and that distorted, barely audible voice came over the speakers again. The first half seemed identical to before. I recognized the rhythm and again heard the word test. But the second half was somewhat different. I think I caught a new word: mirror. Mirror, I blurted out. Lee nodded. She'd heard it too. I turned to the left window, thinking, my eyes following the edge of the cracked glass, then looking down at the thick black liquid. It rippled gently in the orange light. The road now seemed like a narrow bridge, almost level with the water. The black liquid gently lapped at the edge of the road, but it couldn't be entirely black, right? Because something else, even darker than the water's surface, lurked beneath. A gigantic shadow slithering through the water, then diving under the road. I sprang up immediately, but couldn't utter a word. Yes, Lee exclaimed, alarmed. What is it? I tried to find my voice. Look out your window, quick! She followed my gaze. I stood right next to her, staring as the giant shadow swam onto the water's surface on the opposite side. A terrifying monster, hidden, then it turned, following the bus, maintaining a steady distance from the road. Oh my God, I cried. Lee, if you know anything else about this place, I hope it's useful. I really don't, she cried. You know just as much as I do. And we watched in horror as the shadow grew larger and larger, emerging from the water, closer and closer, bringing with it a torrent of rushing water. The liquid shot straight up from the surface, forming a huge, trembling, wide wall. The shadow of oil was about to engulf us. What the? Lee began, then stopped abruptly. The sound of the liquid wall grew deafening, and as it began to stabilize, I saw myself and the bus reflected in it. I saw myself through the cracked window, saw Lee, and even the driver blurry, eerie images. I raised my hand, and my reflection did the same. I lowered my hand, but my reflection's hand did not. My heart pounded. I raised my hand again, raised it, but the reflection still didn't move. My brain struggled to process this absurdity. Then I let out a choked gasp of fear as I saw Lee's reflection suddenly transform. The wall continued to rise, crashing down, ceaselessly rising with the bus. Lee in the mirror was distorting, breaking apart before my eyes, then another figure emerged from that skin. Courtney, the girl who used to bully me, the one I was sure had signed me up for this hell in the first place. I watched in horror as Courtney walked along that ethereal bus. Both of them smiled menacingly, though I couldn't see their eyes anymore. There were only black sockets. I tore my gaze from that scene to look at the real Lei standing beside me. She was also staring intently at the scene in the illusory bus, but her eyes darted back and forth as if following something moving back and forth. Was she seeing something similar to me? I turned back to the wave. Now it wasn't a wave anymore, but real. A second road had appeared, parallel to ours, and that bus wasn't just a reflection on the water. It was like a real bus, within my reach if I stretched my hand through the window. Courtney had reached my side in the mirror. Both still wore that chilling smile. She slowly began to strangle me. My reflection, to be precise. I saw my mirrored self convulse, its neck tightening, staggering and slipping, but Courtney held its head with one hand, holding its head, squeezing tighter and tighter and tighter. And I choked. My real self, yes, actually began to choke. I raised my hand to my neck and I could clearly feel the pressure. Someone's elbow was wrapped around my neck. I couldn't draw a breath. I tried to push it away, but there was nothing there. I looked at Lee, but she stood far from me, not even turning to look. She still gazed out the window, her eyes wide, dazed. I tried to scream, but couldn't. I only groaned in desperation. I needed to breathe. I needed air immediately. In that other bus, my reflection was slowly turning from red to purple, still wearing that horrific smile. The girl accepted being choked without the slightest resistance. Why? I screamed in my head. Why aren't you fighting back? Black spots appeared at the corners of my eyes. I started to feel lightheaded. Lightheaded wasn't enough. I was severely deprived of oxygen. I staggered to the back of the cabin, one hand still clutching my neck, the other fumbling for the door latch, and with a soft hiss, the door popped open. The wind, which had been whistling through the cracked windows, now screamed fiercely, whipping my hair around. The reflection bus was right next to us. Just one jump and I'd be there. I could cross over and stop the madness that was happening. I could barely think anymore. In an emergency, you have to take a risk. I took a step back, then lunged forward, intending to jump to the adjacent bus. But just as I lifted my foot from the floor, two hands grabbed my collar and waist, pulling me back. I fell, slamming painfully onto the bus floor. I grabbed a seat back, trying to push myself up, then spun around, full of anger. "Lee!" I screamed, my voice cutting through the howling wind and the torrential oil rain. "I have to get to that bus." "No," Lee gripped my shoulders tightly. "You can't go over there." "But I stammered. I was going to say I was suffocating, but I was clearly speaking now, wasn't I? I touched my neck again. The choking sensation was gone, and damn it, had it really been real. "Why did you pull me back?" I asked. Lee didn't answer immediately. Instead, she slowly raised her hand and pointed behind me. A chill ran down my spine. I turned my head completely. There was no other bus at all. There was no second road. It had never turned real. The huge black wall of water still crashed down, but there were no more reflections. Now I clearly saw what was inside that wall. It was as big as the bus, maybe even a little bigger, but the similarities ended there. Before me was a colossal, cold, armored machine, a soulless monster, a machine rising from the depths of the water, full of gears, chains, spikes, and sharp metal shards like a plague descending upon this desolate landscape. It made my heart feel like it would stop from fear. It was a living machine bent into the shape of a prehistoric monster, its chains clanking in its maw, which gaped open like a deep-sea anglerfish. It shrieked a grating, metallic sound that echoed through the water and into the air, and for one long, terrifying second, I thought the monster would leap out of the wave and snap its jaws shut on the bus's open door. But it didn't. Its chipped, bulging eye flashed white, then the steel plates on its body vibrated. The monster slid downwards, becoming a fading black shadow, pulling the wall of water down with a loud roar. It crashed into the water's surface and was left behind, dissolving into oil foam and ripples as the bus continued to hurtle along the lonely, empty road. Part 4. I collapsed onto one of the seats, physically and mentally exhausted. "Are you okay?" Lee asked. "I'm fine," I replied, my mind in turmoil. I looked down at my hands and saw they were trembling. I thought about the moment just now when I almost threw myself straight into the jaws of that monster. If Lee hadn't pulled me back, what would have happened? Would the illusion of the mirrored bus and the parallel road have vanished the moment I was airborne, the wind lashing my face? Or would they never have appeared at all, and I would have suddenly hit that pitch-black liquid wall with a guttural scream? Eyes squeezed shut as I was engulfed by the waves, the roaring wind replaced by the muffled hum of water. I could almost feel it, as if I were right there, limbs flailing under the sudden pressure, frantically opening my eyes, trying to find Courtney, to find the bus in the dark, wet, blurry surroundings, only to meet the giant eye of the colossal monster, watching the chains around its jaws spin, watching rows upon rows of sharp teeth ready to drag me deep down, tear me to pieces. I burst into tears, sobbing, and Lee hugged me tightly. "It's okay," she said. "You're okay." How pathetic, I'm crying in front of a stranger. I stiffened, swallowing my tears, trying to compose myself. I took a deep breath. "Okay," I stammered, then louder, as if to reassure myself. "Okay." We sat in silence for a while, our eyes fixed on the vast ocean. "What did you see?" I asked her about the wall of water. Lee frowned, about to say something, but hesitated. "If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to," I comforted her. "No, it's okay. I saw my parents and my siblings inside the burning bus," she said. "I'm the best, I know it. I'm the most diligent, the most loyal." She clenched her hands. "It sounds arrogant, I know, but I have a big family and most of them don't pay attention to anything. And yet my parents almost never acknowledge me. It drives me crazy. It makes me feel like I don't exist." She looked down at her hands, clasping them tightly. "I'm so sorry. Family can be difficult sometimes." I told her about my brother. He lives with my mom on the other side of town. The last time we saw each other, about a week ago, we had a huge fight. We don't usually fight much, so it was really bad. What did we fight about? I'm not really sure. I was irritable that day. I told him he never stood up for me, which wasn't quite true. Sometimes he did. Then my brother got angry and said that, as an older sister, I should be the one to protect him. I replied that he was too good, he didn't need anyone's help. He yelled back that I didn't know anything, that I didn't even understand him. I shook my head. It all sounds so stupid telling it like this. Lee smiled. You seem to care about him a lot. Tell me his strengths. I'd be happy to, I said. I talked about my brother's bravery, how well he understood people, and his incredibly quick adaptability. He was very determined, very confident, and funny too, always making me laugh. Sounds like a good brother, huh? She remarked. I think if I had a family member like that, I'd be much happier. Did you see him in the water wall? No, I replied. Then I told her about my school. Actually, talking like this made me feel more comfortable. Telling someone who genuinely cared about my problems, even just having a real conversation, was enough. You remember, yes, this is what friends are like. The thought was so funny it made me let out a soft laugh. Lee raised an eyebrow, but I just shook my head. It's nothing. School is stressful, but I think people become more empathetic as they grow up. Everyone. Well, most people. We both chuckled softly. Something out in the ocean caught our attention, and we both looked out the window. The orange light from the sky shimmered on the broken glass. A sign appeared. It stood by the road, its pole embedded deep in the black liquid. The sign itself looked old, rusted, and the words on it read, New Eden, and below, City 2 Nam miles. Next to these lines were more words, written in what I guessed was Japanese, on a once bright blue background with white lettering. Now the paint was almost chipped away, faded, white and blue blending into a dull, indistinguishable shade. Thick black paint or something similar crudely scrawled another word, Yomi, meaning someone, a conscious, thinking individual, had deliberately written on it and had to swim out about 10 meters to reach the sign. The bus sped past. Yomi, I whispered, but Lee didn't understand any better than I did. Still, the 50 miles number felt familiar to us. Do you think that means we're still on this water for another 50 miles? Lee asked. I shrugged. Guess we'll just have to wait and see. And we waited. I couldn't completely relax, of course, for countless reasons. But most of all, I kept anticipating the moment the orange light at the front of the bus would come on again, that dreadful static, that distorted, almost incomprehensible voice from the speakers, and another horrific mechanical monster emerging from the water. I remembered the slow, four-legged creature I'd briefly seen when the bus first exited the tunnel. It was monstrously large, perhaps twice the size of the underwater creature, but it was hard to estimate precisely because it was so far away. I looked down at the pitch-black, bottomless water right next to the road. What else lurked beneath? What horrors were hidden deep down, perhaps right beneath our feet right now? I shivered, looking back at the front windshield. Throughout the bus's journey across the murky ocean under the endless twilight sky, to pass the time, Lee and I tried asking the driver a few questions. We asked where we were going, who programmed him, what happened to the world around us. But every question was met only with him tapping his exposed wire knuckles on the "Do Not Talk to the Driver" sign, or irritably slamming the glossy map onto the counter. Only when we said we were feeling dizzy and needed food and drink did he react. He stood up, moving with clicking sounds I hadn't noticed before, still with that emotionless expression, and the bus still driving. He bent down and pulled out a small plastic crate from under the driver's seat. He turned and placed it on the first row of seats, then returned to his position. Lee and I exchanged glances, then opened the lid. Inside were a few plastic water bottles, some packets of potato chips, crackers, and a few unlabeled, sealed cans. Not much, but for now it was fine, especially the water. It helped us clear our heads. Lee stroked her chin, examining the glossy schedule in her hand, while I twisted open a water bottle and took a sip of the cool water. It was warmer than I wanted, but a thirsty person couldn't be picky. It was still delicious. I can't read any of this, Lee lamented, holding up the paper. It seems to be in Japanese, too. I suddenly remembered that I still had a copy of the route in my pocket, and I was sure it was printed in English. I fumbled it out, unfolding it on the small fold-down table on the back of the seat in front. This time, I focused on observing it more closely. New Aden Road Map, printed in the top left corner. Below it was just a messy tangle of intersecting lines with colored squares. Calling it a map was a bit of a stretch. There was a white line running down the center of the page. Several gray lines branched off at different points. At the bottom, at the very end of the page, was a blue square with the word Ararat and a crude drawing of a mountain symbol. Further up was a yellow square labeled CD1, then a white square labeled CD2. A bit higher was a red square named CD3, but this numbering system stopped there. At various points above and below the line were simple stations: Station W, Station X, Station E, and Station Z, and finally, near the top of the page, an orange square labeled Axis Mundi. Yomi, Axis Mundi, City 1 to City 3. This didn't help us. It only created more questions. We guessed the bus was probably running a route between City 1 and City 2. So far, we hadn't seen any of the stations on the map. If it's actually correct, I said, will it stop at those stations? Lee frowned. I don't know, maybe, but I have a bad feeling it won't. Yeah, I replied, I think so too. The bus sped past another sign floating on the water. It looked mostly like an electronic billboard, or used to be. At the very top, faintly printed, was, "The operators ask you to remain vigilant." Below that, more Japanese text, then a large, broken screen like a shattered advertisement. I thought I saw a few flashes of pink-orange on the remaining fragments, but it could also have been light reflecting from the sky or the water. The bus whizzed past this strange thing again. Lee struggled to find the words. Corrupted, ruined, I guess it wasn't like this before. Really? I asked. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this water or oil wasn't here initially, or at least not so high, right up against the bridge, right up against the road. That made sense. It would explain why someone could swim out to that sign. Someone. Meaning there might be other people in this place, living people. Thinking of the girl we failed to save, my heart ached. I didn't want to think about what had happened to her and what might be happening right now, but there wasn't time to dwell. A black object suddenly slammed against the bus's right window. Lee and I both looked up. There was a wet streak on the window, and then instantly another black mass flew past, squeezing through a crack in the glass and embedding itself directly into a nearby seat. It fell into the aisle, spinning, snapping wildly at the air. Oil dripped onto the floor. I recoiled in horror. It was truly bizarre, an eyeless, mechanical fish hissing metallically. Its jaws clamped onto the edge of the seat, gnawing loudly at thick plastic chunks. Then the chaos began. A third one shot out of the flat sea, then a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, then dozens more, one after another. They slammed against the bus, the impact apparently not strong enough to break the glass, but occasionally one would slip through cracks and openings in the doors, causing mayhem. Oh my God, I screamed as one hissed past my face. I felt one brush against my leg. I screamed, recoiled, kicking it backward. Lee bent down and picked up the broken mechanical arm from earlier, growling as she swung it like a baseball bat. She powerfully swept it, hitting a disgusting fish, sending screws and gears flying, knocking it off the bus and back into the sea. She turned to look at me, her expression seeming to say, "Do you see this?" It made me laugh, a crazy laugh mixed with fear and panic, but it also gave me courage. I dumped all the food from the crate onto the seat, then used the crate itself as a scoop, shoveling the wildly biting mechanical fish out of the bus. I mimicked Lee, swinging the crate like a bat as they charged, with mixed results. Oh, damn it, I got distracted. One that had been rolling on the floor suddenly bit down on the skin on the back of my foot, a large, thick membrane. The pain was excruciating, but I couldn't stop. I scooped the fish with the crate and forcefully threw it through the back window of the bus. It landed on the road, oil splattering, screws flying, then thrashed wildly in the scorching sun. I frantically thought of the driver. He still reacted to some things, not all, but some things he noticed. I rushed to the driver's seat, holding the crate up to shield my face as another one crashed into the bus, snapping at the floor. I kicked it through a hole. "Driver," I said, my heart pounding, "your bus is in danger. If you don't do something, the passengers inside will be seriously hurt." To emphasize, I bent down, touched the ceiling, winced, then showed him my bloodied hand. His eyes still didn't leave the road, but I assumed he understood. He shifted gears, the engine roared, and the bus sped up. I staggered, looking out the window. The speed had increased, true, but not by much. The terrifying monsters were still there. Although many were thrown clear, some still slammed against the bus, and a few managed to get inside. Lee ducked her head, avoiding a fish that flew past, hissing horribly over her head. One landed right on our food. I quickly grabbed its tail. It was heavier than I expected, then threw it out the window before it could tear apart the remaining food. I looked down at my hands, covered in disgusting black oil. And more importantly, I didn't know what that substance was. Even if it was oil, I didn't know if there were strange bacteria or pathogens in that black liquid. I didn't want to take any more risks, especially infection. So, I continued to use the crate, using it until it shattered, breaking into worthless plastic scraps. Lee and I continued to fend off the metal fish, though she dodged more nimbly than I did. She seemed to know exactly where they were on the bus. We held out for another 20 long minutes, until the bus finally crossed a bridge and returned to the gray-black wasteland. I couldn't believe I would ever be relieved to see this wasteland. My leg ached terribly, and as I slumped into the seat to catch my breath, I groaned, seeing it bruised and bleeding, a large patch of skin torn off, covered in bite marks. "Are you okay?" Lee asked, leaning into the seat beside me, placing a hand on my knee. She was still in much better shape than I was. I tried to force a reassuring smile. "I'm fine, thank you." She looked at my leg, frowning. Then she took a water bottle and began to pour a little on my ankle. "Lee, don't, that's our only water." "I know," she said. "I'll use just a little." I let her. I looked out the window, observing our surroundings. This place was flatter than the previous one, endless gray-black sand, a desolate, gloomy desert. Not entirely empty either. Fewer rocks than the previous land, fewer remnants of old structures, but there were streetlights or the remains of them. They stood scattered irregularly, suggesting not all of them had survived. Some were still along the road, others formed lines in the desert, marking paths that no longer existed. We passed about 5 or 6, then saw one that was still dimly lit. I watched it as the bus sped past, the weak white light flickering. "Yes, look," Lee nudged my sleeve. I turned to look through the windshield, leaning out of my seat. Ahead was the most intact building we'd seen so far. It was almost burnt black, about 2 stories high. In fact, it might have once been taller. Beside it was a chaotic pile of broken iron and old machinery, stacked high into an insurmountable tower. As we got closer, it was clear the dilapidated tower was built right in the middle of the road, as if to block the way. Perhaps intentionally. "Yes," Lee called again, more urgently this time. "What is it?" "Look on the roof." I followed her gaze, and my heart pounded again. It was all relentless. A man appeared from a dark corner, pacing on the highest part of the building. I couldn't make out his face clearly because of the distance, but he wore a long, oil-stained brown coat. He was looking at us at the bus. "Should we do something?" I asked. "Should we call the driver?" Lee didn't know. Time passed and made the decision for us. The pile of scrap metal blocking the road was closer. For a moment of horror, I thought the driver would continue or even accelerate, crashing straight through, but no. He shifted gears, the bus slowed, and I realized what the stranger intended to do. "Oh my God, Lee, he wants to jump. He wants to jump onto the bus roof." She looked at me, then leaned over the seat back to get a better look through the window. The bus slowed. The driver steered away from the debris, swerving to the right, rolling onto the uneven ground next to the building. The whole bus shook, and sure enough, the stranger leaped from his hiding place. He vanished from sight for a second. Then we heard a thud on the bus roof. We rounded the colossal pile of scrap and quickly returned to the road, regaining speed. For a while, everything was eerily silent. I gasped, then opened the roof hatch. A voice from above barked, "Who are you? What do you want? Let me in, I'm not here to cause harm." I stood up and walked towards the small roof hatch. "Yes, wait, what are you doing?" But I didn't stop. I didn't stop because deep down, I realized the voice didn't sound entirely right, but the familiarity was unmistakable. I climbed onto the seat, reached up, and unlatched the hatch. It clanged open. A dusty brown leather shoe appeared, then a second. Lee pulled my shoulder, pulling me back. We both watched as the man, in his ragged coat, his face gray, jumped through the hatch and into the bus. He indeed had a haggard look, but his eyes, shining, looked straight into mine, revealing such relief and even affection that I felt my own eyes well up. He looked gaunt, scarred, at least 15 years older than his true age, but I still recognized him. The person who should still be that young boy, it was Ryan. Part 5. "Yes," my brother's voice was choked. He rubbed the back of his hand across his eyes, but it didn't stop a few tears from rolling down his dust-smeared face. After all this time, I didn't know what to say, didn't know where to start, but I forced myself to remain calm as he rushed to hug me tightly. I wrapped my arms around him too. "Ryan," I stammered when he finally pulled away. The lines around Ryan's eyes were etched deep. His jaw seemed sharper, stubbled with oil. I looked down at his hands as he gently slid them along my arms, then let them drop. His left hand was covered in scars and deep scratches, while his right wrist and palm were crudely wrapped in a fingerless glove. I looked up and tried to find the words. "What happened to you, Ryan? You're so..." He laughed, a sound that brought me some comfort. "So old, yes, I'm not that old." And indeed, he looked like a man in his late 20s or early 30s, but still far too old for his actual age. The smile quickly vanished. "I've been waiting for you for so long, terribly long. Searching for you, I had to." "Searching for me?" I asked. "But I only left home a few hours ago, didn't I?" "Perhaps I've been on this bus for almost an entire day, but even so." "No, yes," he said, his voice sad. "It's been a very, very long time. The bus. It won't take you back." I just stared at him. The person in front of me had my brother's voice. "You're scaring me. Please tell me. How did you know I was on the bus?" A pang of remorse crossed his face. "Because I was the one who signed you up," he whispered. I was stunned. Fear, frustration, and the joy of seeing him again all tangled within me. The bus engine rumbled beneath. I ran my hands over my face, thinking, then looked out the window. Another sign appeared outside the desolate desert, its original lettering so faded it was almost invisible. But again, there was black, greasy paint, identical to the previous signs, crude and bold, scrawled with something that looked like Latin characters but was Japanese. Perhaps it read Kegerkuni, but it flashed past too quickly. "Why did you do it?" I finally asked. "I was stupid, yes, I'm truly sorry. At the time, I was just angry with you, that's all. We had just had a fight, do you remember?" "I remember, just last week," I replied. "Yes, of course. Then one day you were gone. That's when I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. I didn't think anything would happen. I can't even describe the fear, panic, and pain of those first 2 weeks. I waited and waited for you to come home, but you didn't. I searched everywhere for you until I understood that if I wanted to see you again, I had to look further. How did you get here, Ryan?" I asked, turning to look at him. The bus passed over an old railway track, a railway for trains, stretching into the distance in both directions, crossing the road at a 90-degree angle. Ryan frowned, rubbing the back of his gloved hand. "The bus isn't the only way to travel between worlds," he murmured. Another silence. The orange light of the eternal twilight cast upon a scene like a field of shattered glass on black sand. The dazzling light shone directly into my eyes, making me squint and shield them. I wanted to be angry with him, truly wanted to vent all my resentment for what he'd done, but the emotion faded. "To be honest, I'm so glad to see you, Ryan, and I have to say, you've changed so much," I said, half joking, half serious. He laughed heartily, then hugged me again, tighter. "Come on," I groaned playfully, pushing him away. "So what's the plan? Now that you've found us, how do we all get home, and what about your age now?" A horrifying thought flashed through my mind, making me suddenly anxious. Wait, did everyone at home age like you? Mom and Dad? How much have I missed? Ryan explained, "I don't intend to return to the exact moment I left. We'll go back to the precise moment you disappeared, or close enough that it won't make much difference." "Then how do you explain being this old?" Ryan didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Lee, who had been silently witnessing everything. "Didn't I introduce her?" Ryan asked. "Oh, right, sorry. Ryan, this is Lee. Lee, this is my brother Ryan, though he's not supposed to be this old." Lee gave a slight wave. Ryan frowned. "Have I met you somewhere before? You look familiar." Lee shook her head. "Perhaps you've seen me around. I live just a few blocks from your house. Nice to meet you, Ryan." Ryan nodded, then clapped his hands as if to signal the plan. "I've scouted this route. I've seen the challenges and obstacles ahead. It's been agonizing. I've been all the way to Axis Mundi, and the plan is simple. Complete what I failed before, get you two to the end of the road, and make sure the bus takes the right path, the path that leads us home." "Failed?" I asked. "Yes, it's been a torment, yes. I've ridden this bus many times, both to find you and to accompany others like you from city to city, station to station." A sad smile crossed his face, not reaching his eyes. He silently looked somewhere, unconsciously reaching up to touch the necklace around his neck. It held a small cross. My brother wasn't usually religious, and I didn't recognize this necklace. "This is my 11th trip on the bus. Each time, I've gone a different distance." I said I've been to Axis Mundi, and that's true, but only once. The bus only runs one way, and there are no other vehicles here, none that work anymore. So I always have to walk all the way back, crossing the desert. I shook my head. "I don't understand why you have to do that. Why walk all the way back here? Why not just stay until the end and wait for us to arrive?" "Yes," he replied with a sentence that chilled me to the bone. "In my experience, few people survive the challenges of City 2. As he spoke, he reached into his jacket, pulling out 2 small weapons, tossing one to each of us. At first, they looked like blades or something, but when fully pulled from his pocket midair, it was clear the blade had been replaced by what I guessed were magnets. I caught mine, while Lee fumbled and dropped hers to the floor, bending down to pick it up. "So you know everything about this place?" Lee cautiously asked. Ryan shook his head. "I've gathered quite a bit and pieced it together. In Axis Mundi, there are still some buildings with useful documents inside, but I still don't know the full story." We passed a chilling sight on the roadside, a machine suspended on a broken streetlight pole, impaled, one might say. Its headless head dangled to one side, its 2 arms raised high, gears, pistons, springs at its joints rusted and still, and the metal plates on its chest severely corroded. 6 crab legs dangled down to the sand, and though the orange twilight cast a flame-like hue on its body, its shadow stretched long across the dusty ground. The bus sped past without slowing. Ryan looked up at the dim light mounted on the ceiling in front of the windshield. "Soon," he murmured, and he was right. Something was coming. I didn't see it, didn't even hear it, but I felt something waiting along the road. I almost thought the engine seemed a little quieter, as if waiting. "One of the designers, the operators, as they're called, was obsessed with travel," Ryan continued, if the Axis Mundi files he read were accurate. The bus lurched violently as it hit a deep pothole. Lee and I swayed, but Ryan remained steady, continuing to speak without pause. He was obsessed with bus travel, specifically. A Japanese man who had a series of cross-America trips, overwhelmed and inspired by the vastness of the fields, the endless highways. Immersed in the bus seat as the sun shone across the world, warmth reaching his skin, dust floating in the air, scenery flashing past the window. He looked out the window, clearly quoting the designer's words that he knew by heart. "We are neither here nor there. We are suspended in purgatory. We and the strangers around us temporarily share a common bond. All are in transit." He glanced up at the front light again, still dim. "I also don't know the original purpose of this place. They called it New Eden. Now it's known by another name. The tests here are spiritual. They are meant to examine moral qualities in what they call a non-invasive way." "Non-invasive?" I exclaimed. Lee and I exchanged glances. Ryan gave a bitter chuckle. "I know. As I said, this place is slowly decaying. It's broken, it's corrupted." "Corrupted?" Lee whispered. Ryan nodded in agreement. I was about to reach out and take her hand, then paused mid-action, feeling awkwardly self-conscious. Despite everything we'd been through, I still cared too much about how I appeared to others. But remembering how she had touched my knee, concerned about my leg wound, I felt foolish and continued, gently placing my hand on hers, squeezing softly. "Are you okay?" I asked. She had been quite quiet since getting on the bus, probably due to the stress. I didn't blame her. I looked at Ryan and still saw my brother, but to Lee, in front of her was a man covered in dust, scarred. Lee nodded, looking up at the light. "It's almost time," she said, her voice so sharp that I immediately tensed, ready to follow any instruction. He had never been like this before. What had he been through in this place? How had he survived in the vast desert, all alone? "These magnets," he continued, "will draw the machines closer. They can't resist the pull, but when they realize it's a magnet, they'll panic. That's when you shove the weapon into their head or chest or wherever. My experience shows that works." Lee glanced up, indicating the driver. "What about the driver?" Ryan shook his head, cutting her off. "No use on the driver, no use on any driver. I've tried. That bastard is much tougher." The air grew heavier. What do we need to do? I asked, fear rising. What's the specific plan? Don't trust anything it says, Ryan whispered. Please don't believe a word. And right then, the light suddenly flashed orange. A piercing static vibrated throughout the bus. The distorted speakers began to crackle to life. Part 6. The light suddenly flared orange. A deafening static reverberated the length of the bus, and the distorted, crackling speaker system seemed to jolt to life. It's here, Ryan said quickly, his voice low. That machine is full of lies. Everything it says is a lie. If it gets too close, use the magnets. Don't let it manipulate you. It will focus on one person more than the other. It always does. I looked at Lee, both our eyes filled with fear. Behind her, out in the desert, a colossal shadow suddenly streaked across the sun-baked black sand. My eyes widened. Lee also noticed. She turned to follow my gaze, and the three of us watched as the shadow grew larger and larger, beginning to circle the speeding bus. Another rusted sign flashed past. It too was chipped, scratched, and faded like all the other signs, tinged with the cruel orange of the horizon. And like the previous sign, the words Kegerkuni were hastily scrawled in black ink. Below the sign, the crushed remains of a child-sized machine lay, and the shadow rushed closer. Ryan let out a growl, gesturing for us to get behind him. His head darted quickly from side to side, his eyes tracking the shadow's trajectory, seemingly calculating something. Then he lowered his voice. "To the back seat," he said quickly. "Run to the back." We obeyed, stumbling down the aisle, and just a second later, the shadow enveloped the cabin. Everything plunged into temporary darkness, then a deafening crash echoed as the creator of the shadow landed on the bus roof. The bus body shook violently, swaying left and right down the road, bumping over potholes and cracks, kicking up clouds of sand as it grazed the edge of the wilderness. For several long, chaotic seconds, the bus even tipped onto two wheels, teetering wildly, while the driver struggled to regain balance. Lee's scream mingled with mine as the bus thumped back onto the road. We tumbled into our seats, but Ryan remained steady throughout the ordeal, the hem of his cloak flapping around his ankles, dust rising as he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. A gigantic, oil-stained iron hand slammed through a remaining window. Another arm reached in from the opposite side, then another from further away. Ryan raised his hands to shield his face, and with the screech of tearing metal, the entire front half of the bus roof ripped from its frame. Lee and I raised our hands to cover our heads as shards of glass rained down, and through my fingers, I saw Ryan ducking low, dodging a long, thin strip of metal, still attached, that whizzed past his head. The front half of the ceiling detached from the body, and the orange light of the sky flooded the cabin as the roof was brutally flung into the wasteland. I caught a glimpse of it falling into an existing pile of twisted metal. I looked up over the back of the seat, squinting through the dense dust. Ryan stood there, his back to me but looking resolute, his shoulders straight, his dust-laden hair whipping in the strong desert wind. Light glinted on the shoulder of his jacket, where the tip of the magnet blade gleamed in his gloved hand. In front of him, towering over the remaining bus roof, was a terrifying winged monster, a machine from a nightmare, in the shape of a brutal, jagged iron skeleton. Two colossal metal wings sprouted from behind its shoulder blades, 4 wings in total. The inner 2 slowly folded back against its body, while the other 2 remained spread wide for balance, obscuring most of the light. One of its eyes was pitch black, cracked, sparking dangerously in the dark of its face, but the other eye glowed intensely, a pure white circle. With a series of piston hisses and a deep, guttural grind, its jaw opened wide, then retracted completely, revealing another, more flexible jaw inside, connected by rusted chains. This new jaw stretched into a long, distorted smile. The creature's 2 arms still clung to the edge of the bus for support, but a third arm, growing from the center of its chest, descended past the broken window and slowly reached down towards Ryan. The movement revealed an ancient word painted on the armor above its chest, along with a series of Japanese characters. Medat. The 8th character was smudged and scratched. I couldn't read it. As the machine lowered its hand closer to my brother, Ryan raised his fist, clutching the magnet, seemingly unconsciously. The monster's iron hand also moved in that direction, but as its steel fingertips touched Ryan, he suddenly thrust the tip of the magnet forcefully upwards. Accompanied by a scream like a captain on deck, launching his final harpoon into the body of a colossal whale. The weapon plunged deep into the mechanism of the monster's hand. It recoiled with a shower of sparks and a shriek, as if stung by a poisonous insect. Medat's living eye glowed. "Ryan, it's good to see you again. I thought you had died a miserable, lonely death somewhere, instead of rotting in the desert sand." The monster's voice sounded like a powerful, dying engine, like a turbine burning out, like a groan in agony. It seemed to draw all the surrounding wind into the empty bus, like a vacuum. Ryan didn't answer. It was hard to understand how he was still standing. My heart hammered as if it would explode from my chest. Surely the monster could hear it, or maybe it had already heard. "I can't help but notice that Christy is no longer with you. Did you abandon her? Such a pity. I thought more of you than that. Christy." "Who is Christy?" The monster's voice sounded like a powerful, dying engine, like a turbine burning out, like a groan in agony. It seemed to draw all the surrounding wind into the empty bus, like a vacuum. "I abandoned no one." Ryan's voice was strained. The machine immediately ground its gears, lunging forward. Oil dripped onto the aisle. The air felt heavier, hotter. "Do you want to know what happened to her? Do you, traveler? Do you want to know the truth?" "I get no truth from your kind, you lying machine." Ryan's voice cut through the engine's roar and the howling wind. "You still cling to that false belief? You know so little. You lead this flock of sheep to destruction, like the serpent led the first woman, and she, in turn, led the first man." The monster lifted its head, a large gear in its chest whirring. My throat went dry as I saw it swivel its dead eye towards me and Lee. "Vapor plumes from the crack in your neck. You wear an interesting mask, Lee. Or is that emotion real? I can't tell which is more pathetic." The monster leaned in closer, again extending its middle arm. This time, Ryan didn't use a trick. He simply continued to forcefully thrust the magnet, sparking. The machine's hand recoiled, its fingers twitching, shooting small electric currents. Then it clenched its hand into a fist. "Try again, and I will snuff out your weapon like a matchstick." "Never, you liar," Ryan screamed back. "Stay away, and I won't get any closer either." Medat's eye blazed brighter. A growl erupted from its steel throat. "Christy died calling your name, traveler. She pleaded until her last second that you would return to save her. Alas, you were too busy building her grave in the desert." "You liar," Ryan's voice was suddenly choked with emotion. I could clearly hear the pain. "What were you, anyway, before this world became corrupted? What purpose did your kind have here, or are you just a corrupted product of the operators?" "You are angrier than the last time we met. What has changed?" Its metal head shot up faster than its large size should have allowed. I took a deep breath, forced to swallow air thick with the smell of iron. It stared directly at me, its gaze almost palpable. "Is this the one, this girl, yes?" I tried not to react, but it must have seen something on my face or in my posture. A grating series of sounds, like laughter, echoed through the four walls of the bus. "It is you. A pleasure to meet you. Do you believe this one, yes? The one who calls himself your brother?" I copied Ryan's method. I screamed at the machine, my hair whipping around, then pushed myself up to stand. "You're a liar. I don't need to hear anything you have to say." Medat edged closer. It gripped the bus frame. "Oh, but I have it. He calls himself a savior. Let's see how he enjoys being a hero. If only you could see his mistakes, the crimes he committed while pursuing his own cunning and misguided goals." I glanced at Ryan, but he didn't respond. He stood still, his eyes locked on the metal face, his hand gripping the magnet. What kind of brother throws his sister into a place like this? This Yomi? This corrupted world Kegerkuni? Its eyes swept over the three of us, then settled firmly on me. "You are surrounded by falsehood and deceit, trickery and danger. A stranger masquerading as your brother and another masquerading as your friend. You will find no true friends here, girl. Do you want to end this game? End these who hide the rules. Jump off the bus. You will survive the landing and free yourself from these false tests." "All lies," I screamed back. "I know a friend when I meet them, and I also recognize my brother, whether he's 80, 90, or 100 years old. Keep your tricks to yourself, you desert scrap metal." The machine's body twitched, shaking violently, and again that distorted, more sinister laugh echoed. Oil dripped from its inner jaw, splattering onto the floor. Ryan took a short step back as the oil sprayed up. "That blind faith will bury you. You will meet the same fate as the operators before you. Death and suffering await you if you remain on this vehicle." Its eyes swept quickly over the broken cabin. It seems there are only 3 of you and all are awake. What a pity. Failing the first test will have significant consequences for your journey. Be wise. Abandon this wheeled prison while you still can. Get out, I screamed. Lee also stood up beside me, gripping my hand tightly. Medat shifted its gaze to Lee. I know what you are doing, Lee, you traitor among the ranks. How do you assess the girl's performance in the first official test? An interesting result. Perhaps it certainly gives you much to think about. You know perfectly well she would be so much better off leaving this vehicle, yet you still pretend to be friendly. Lee said nothing. I didn't know how she endured the monster's words, which seemed to pour directly into the cracks of her mind, seeping in like thick oil, demanding a reaction, anything, as long as we responded to it. But perhaps the exchange with the monster was also nearing its end. I felt it. Sweat trickled down my back. My eyes darted to the bus door. Truth be told, the thought of jumping down had crossed my mind. The sand was probably soft enough, at least not too hard, and amidst the intense, stifling heat in this cabin, the wasteland outside suddenly didn't seem so terrifying. The monster saw my thought. You do well if you follow your instincts, yes, but the decision is yours. Think about what I have said. Ask yourself who is truly lying. Your choice does not matter to me. Eden has long since fallen. Without another word, the large monster released its grip on the bus frame. The metal wings on its back violently snapped open, releasing a surge of steam. It leaned back, its eyes fixed on the sky. The endless twilight cast a slight sheen on the metal. Then, with a motion accompanied by a chilling, howling wind that rushed into the cabin, it leaped, shooting into the air. The bus shuddered violently. Medat silently flew out of sight, its colossal shadow slithering across the scorching sand before slowly, silently dissolving into the distant expanse. Part 7. As the winged mechanical monster departed, I slumped back into my seat, running my dust-covered hand across my face. I couldn't take it anymore. These constant adrenaline surges. I laughed, realizing how defiant I had been in the face of that earlier horror, confronting a pitch-black giant. But the laughter quickly turned into choked sobs. Lee also slumped into another seat, her eyes dazed, her face pensive. And my brother immediately rushed to my side, kneeling next to me, the one who claimed to be my brother at least. I closed my eyes for a damn second. The machine's words had crept into my mind. It had said exactly what it needed to say to stir up my fears, guilt, and doubts. I opened my eyes and looked into his. Those eyes were my brother's exactly as I remembered them. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust him completely. But a crack had formed. Doubt, sadly, had begun to sprout. The bus sped past a lone streetlight pole in the desert, its shadow quickly sweeping across Ryan's face. Are you okay, yes? He asked. Honestly, no, not okay. He nodded. Yeah, that's understandable. But you know it's lying, right? That's how it works. I'm not some glory-seeking hero. I'm here because I love you, and I'm here because finding you is the right thing to do. I've carried this regret for so long, but it's worth it. All of this, you're being stuck here, is my fault. He shrugged, scratching the back of his neck. For just a moment, I saw a glimpse of his teenage self. He had changed so much now. The scars were etched deep. They cut across his eyebrow, ran along his cheekbones, spread onto his neck. I told myself, this is my brother. He endured all of this for me. But was it only for me? Yes, I glanced at the silver cross dangling around his neck. Who is she, Ryan? I asked. He recoiled, sighing, not annoyed, just sad. Perhaps someone very important to me, he said simply. I didn't have the strength to ask more. Instead, I turned to look at Lee, who was sitting under the remaining part of the roof, her back to the window. Outside, the desert continued endlessly. Her hair and shoulders were faintly tinged with orange. She suddenly looked up, meeting my gaze. She gave a sad smile. You were amazing just now, yes. Facing him, you were so brave. I just sat there like an idiot, mute. I wanted to speak up, to defend you and myself, but I couldn't think of anything to say. I'm sorry. Everything's so messed up. It had been so long since anyone had genuinely complimented me. I yearned to grasp that praise, to cling to it, to absorb it, to accept the kindness. But if the doubts about Ryan had only settled like a thin layer of dust, the apprehension about Lee had taken deeper root within me. As much as I yearned for her to be my friend, a girl who, honestly, reminded me a lot of myself when I still had friends, when I was still cool and cared about, I still couldn't trust. The tone of the machine's voice when it spoke to her, the things it hinted at, the truth that she had known about this world before me. Ryan said Medet lied. But what if Ryan was wrong? What was Lee hiding from me? She clearly had reasonable explanations for all the questions. She had saved me from jumping into the Leviathan's water wall. But Medet said getting off the bus would be safer. What if Medet was right? My hand slammed onto my forehead. My head ached terribly. My throat was still dry. I reached for a water bottle and took another sip. My stomach growled. I felt no embarrassment anymore. Here, Ryan said, pushing the scattered bags of chips and crackers towards us. It looks like you two haven't eaten much. There probably wasn't much in the crate earlier. Let me open these cans for us, okay? He sat down in the aisle, pulled a knife from his belt pouch, and extended the blade. He stabbed it diagonally into the can lid, running the tip around the edge until he could pry the food into a military-style container. His portable kitchen had run out of fuel. He hoped to find more gas canisters in Axis Mundi, but for now, we'd have to eat cold. Is that okay? He handed me the container along with a small metal fork. It looked like some kind of ravioli in tomato sauce. Only one can, he said, turning to Lee. You two share it. Lee held out her hand. I'm not very hungry. You go ahead, yes, just leave a little for me. I'll eat later. I was hungry, so I nodded. Thank you. I grabbed the food and ate. It wasn't bad, actually it was quite good. It even felt a little warm. I passed it to Ryan. We took turns, trying to share what little nutrition we had, better to save the other cans. The alarm rang again before we left CD2. If the broken lampposts and endless desert could be called a city, then when the bell rang, we were still eating. Lee and I flinched, but Ryan raised a hand to reassure us. He swallowed his mouthful, then sprang to his feet. Hopefully, quickly this time. Remember to hold your breath if I tell you to. He had already jumped onto the seat before the distorted speaker finished, though I vaguely caught the word memories. Ryan unclipped his bag and placed it in front of him, the metal buckles on the strap reflecting the orange light. He reached in and pulled out a gleaming gun, perhaps a revolver. I wasn't familiar with weapons. Oh my God, Ryan, I cried, but he didn't answer. He squinted one eye, perfectly balanced, aiming down the barrel. I followed his gaze. Something was flying from the scrap metal heap in the desert. A child-sized machine, bird-shaped, flapping its wings like Medet, except its two wings were proportionally larger, but overall it was much smaller than the previous one. Ryan muttered something, then louder, "Cover your ears." Lee and I obeyed. Clearly, this was too far to shoot, and with that asterisk gun, it was absurd. But he pulled the trigger. The shot echoed loudly in the bus, and the creature's left wing was shorn off. It shrieked, its trajectory wildly unstable, oil spraying across the sand as it spun out of control. Damn it, not enough, it's still going to crash into the bus. Hold your breath, Ryan yelled, then fired again. The bullet pierced the machine's body, sparks flying. It stopped shrieking instantly, but inertia still sent it crashing into the side of the bus. The impact sent countless small screws and gears flying, and something else. A cloud of black-purple smoke, a damp cloud, most of it left behind as the bus sped away, but a few tendrils of smoke snaked through the windows, swirling around us. Now the bus had more holes than intact parts. Ryan stared at us, putting his gun away, pinching his nose, tapping his throat, clearly instructing us to hold our breath. I really, really tried. My face must have been bright red as I clenched my fists, my lungs burning, the desert rushing past. We passed the wreckage of a truck, a chassis without tires, buried in the sand. Next to it, a colossal sign, now leaving City 2, CD 370 MILES. And of course, accompanied by faded Japanese characters. The smoke must have cleared by now, right? I couldn't see it anymore. I needed to breathe. I needed air. I looked at Lee, then at Ryan, but he frowned, tapping his neck, stomping his foot repeatedly on the floor. Just one breath, quickly. Finally, I relented, opening my mouth and inhaling. I must have inhaled some residual smoke. That was my first thought. I didn't see any smoke. Surely the holes in the bus had blown most of it away. But it hadn't fully dissipated. That was my second thought. Because I had just inhaled something, very little, but enough to make me collapse into the seat instantly. I felt like I was drifting in water. I saw Ryan jump into the seat, moving towards me, but his movements were slow, incredibly slow. The constant orange outside suddenly changed to a pale purple light. At first, it was beautiful, beautiful until I saw Courtney's face hidden in the darkness. I tried to turn to look, but my head was ridiculously heavy. Heavy. Then she reappeared in the blurry shadow on the opposite side. I tried to turn again, the shadows merged, and I found myself at school. I was playing ice hockey. This was when I first transferred. I used to play at my old school. My dad made me try out for the new team. I still remember this moment. I remember it very clearly. Courtney was skating straight towards me. She would crash into me, knock me down. I would fall and break my collarbone. That was the price for scoring, I guess. And this wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that I was smiling. I felt my facial muscles and I couldn't change them. I couldn't alter the memory. I was smiling because I hated conflict. I saw her charging, saw her malice, yet still wanted to think the best of her. My first instinct was to humble myself, hoping to appease her. Maybe if I smiled, she wouldn't see me as a threat. But the smile only deepened the humiliation when she slammed me down onto the ice with a terrifying hit. Now she would joke with someone. I could almost anticipate the pain, but the memory ended there. The scene around me rippled, distorting like steam, and I realized my head was leaning against the glass, not the ice. I wasn't wearing my hockey uniform either. The purple faded. The orange of the sky returned. The coolness of the ice rink vanished, replaced by the stifling heat of the bus. "Yes, are you okay?" Ryan's voice sounded off-sync with his lip movements. I groaned, closing my eyes for a moment, then slowly opened them, blinking. I saw Lee and Ryan looking at me anxiously. "Yeah," I whispered. I was so stupid. I held my breath as long as I could, thought all the smoke was gone. "I'm sorry." "I should have been clearer," he said. "But from your description, it didn't seem too bad. I was afraid telling you beforehand would make you not believe it. It's that dangerous." "What is it?" Lee asked, frowning. "The smoke brings back painful memories, or sometimes happy memories that turn into nightmares. It loops and repeats, creating a maze. You have to try to find your way out. Trust me, it's a living hell." He gently squeezed my knee, then released it, turning to check his gun again. "It seems like I'm the only one being targeted," I murmured. Lee must have heard me. We both briefly glanced at each other. No one said anything more, but the thought passed between us like an electric current. She looked at me, looking pained, which made me feel guilty. "You wanted this, yes. Wanted to push away the only non-related friend you've made in 3 years." Lee turned away. "Why didn't you use it on that machine just now, Ryan?" she asked, pointing at the gun. "The talking one met at." "It's low on ammo. I haven't found a replacement, and sometimes shooting isn't the best approach. Christy once stopped me from using this on the train. That saved my life." "Train," Lee repeated. Ryan paused. "Ryan," I began, "tell me, how did you get here? How long has it been? And who is Christy? How did Medet know her?" Questions, questions, questions. Ryan raised his gloved hand to his forehead. His eyes suddenly looked ancient, older even than his haggard, journey-worn face. He was silent for a very long time. We looked out through the broken window at the desolate landscape. "Christy," he finally began, his voice hoarse, "was the first person I met on the train, 5 years after you disappeared, yes. 5 years since I signed you up for this hell." I shivered. Just thinking about a world where my parents had lost both their children, both sucked into this corrupted land, was terrifying enough. That train journey was long and haunting. I'll tell you about it later. Essentially, it was another way to travel between worlds. Initially, I wanted to sign up for this bus myself, but I couldn't find that damn forum. I searched for years. He sighed. "I don't think that train is related to this place. They're not directly connected much. And all in all, getting on the train was hard as hell. Staying sane while on it was even harder." He skillfully removed his glove, showing us a scar carved into the back of his hand, like an ancient symbol, somewhat resembling the letter R with 4 straight lines. "From what I understand, train tickets are paid with blood," he murmured, a distant memory making his eyes ache as he looked at the carving. He looked up. "Anyway, I got on the train hoping it would lead me here, yes, to where you were. And the train hates noise. It forbids commotion like that. At first, I didn't know. My first week on the train, I got into a fight." "A week?" I cried. "You were on that train for a whole week." Ryan gave a dry chuckle. "More than that, yes, much more, and I almost used my gun after 4 days. If I had, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you too. Christy stopped me. She calmed me down. She saved me." He took a long, shaky breath, recalling the painful memory. "We talked. She was on the train to find her sister. The girl had gone missing because of some foolish ritual." He shook his head. Sometimes people act so ignorantly. The engine roared. The bus continued its persistent journey along the straight road, crossing the parched desert. We saw many magnificent things. He and I wandered from world to world for years, fighting against the silver waves on the edge of a black, impregnable cliff under a swirling golden sky. He smiled nostalgically. There's a lighthouse keeper there who still owes me a favor. I listened, both vaguely and captivated. Christy was extraordinary. We fell in love, of course. I proposed to her in a realm of glittering sinews, where giant blood vessels flowed like rivers underground. He reached up to touch the cross around his neck. Then we found her sister, rescued her amidst a furious storm on the peak of a living mountain. I can still hear its roar sometimes, drowning out even the thunder when I try to sleep. But after taking the girl back to safety, Christy chose to stay. She chose to accompany me. She said, "I've found my sister, Ryan. Now I owe you finding yours." So we continued, station to station, world to world. Finally, we came here to this ruin they call New Eden. She put me on this bus, and the second time too. He rubbed his chin. I'm rambling again, not what you asked. Sorry. In short, yes, Christy was killed in a test. We were helping a boy, the youngest we'd ever seen, maybe not even 11 yet. He clenched his jaw. Christy died protecting me, correcting one of my mistakes as she always did. She was torn from the bus, dead in a matter of seconds, I'm sure of it. I would have gone after her if she hadn't made me promise to take care of the boy. We'll take him home, Ryan, she said. Promise me, we'll take the boy home. Ryan rapped his knuckles on his forehead, forcing himself to continue, sounding strained. He must have never revisited these memories in this way. That boy wouldn't have stood a chance without me, so I kept my promise, took him through the tests until I could send him off. That's when I built Christy's memorial, in my grief, in Axis Mundi. A memorial for Christy? That talking monster dared to say she was still alive then? That she was, damn it, that she was calling for you? Ryan suddenly stood up, his hands clenched tightly. He composed himself, looking down at me, his eyes moist. Medet lies, it lies, lies, lies. I didn't abandon Christy. I kept my promise. There's no way she survived falling off that bus in that condition. No way. He shook his head, sounding more like he was convincing himself than anyone else. No way. I felt a pang of pity. I gently reached out and touched his arm. Lee also offered a sympathetic, strained smile. Ryan looked out at the desert, the wind whipping his dusty hair under the scorching sun, his shadow clearly showing the silver cross glinting on his neck. Medat might be a liar. I don't understand what trap it's setting, but on one point at least it was right. It called my brother a stranger, and in truth he was. I loved him immensely, always have, always will. But the man standing before me was, in some ways, a stranger now. I didn't understand him as I used to. I didn't know this person. Part 8. The 70-mile journey from the vague border of CD2 to the welcome sign of CD3 passed mostly in silence and without serious incident. At Lee's suggestion, Ryan told another story about his life on the train, but both she and I felt that the memory seemed to cause Ryan pain, so when he finished speaking, we didn't ask further. He took the opportunity to retreat to the back of the bus, where there was some shade, trying to catch a little sleep before the next test began. It was just Lee and I, sitting alone near the front of the bus. We talked, initially a bit awkward but quickly returning to our earlier comfort. We played tic-tac-toe on the dust-covered seatbacks, talked about Courtney and my life at home. I also asked Lee about her life. I asked more about her family. She reiterated the story about not getting along with her siblings, about her parents not acknowledging her. I wondered why I'd never seen her at my school. She said she went to a different school. I asked what she wanted to do in the future. She replied that she only hoped to find a job that would give her freedom and allow her to travel. Her answers were quite vague. Individually, none were suspicious enough, but together, they hinted at more. She was hiding something from me. Don't think I didn't notice, dear reader. I knew, and I had acknowledged this risk, but I had chosen. Either I would maintain my friendship with the girl who had perhaps saved my life, the one who treated me kindly, or I would follow Medat's description, alienating her due to vague doubts in this desolate place, which would not benefit anyone. But most of all, this wasn't just a calculated move. It was a simple personal choice. I remembered what it was like to talk to someone, to be listened to and respected. I remembered having someone care. I remembered friendly contact that wasn't a sudden shove in the hallway. I was only human. We also revisited the young girl from the beginning, the one who was sleeping when a machine dragged her off the bus. Do you think she could still be alive, Lee? She shrugged. I hope so, it's entirely possible. It didn't look like the monster harmed her when it took her. I mused. Falling asleep. A girl asleep at the back of the bus. I felt like I was almost piecing together the puzzle, as if I had all the pieces, but just hadn't fit them together yet. What do you think it all means? There's still something not revealed, I can feel it. We couldn't wake her up, I recalled. I also fell asleep on the bus, slept for over an hour. That almost never happens. I don't sleep in public. And you fell asleep too, right? When you woke up, that guy was right next to you. Lee nodded. Do you often fall asleep on the bus? No, I don't usually. So why? Is there something we're missing? I don't know, she replied sadly, looking out the window. She was lying. I didn't press her, but I hoped to God it was for a good reason. I really hoped there was a good reason for her to hide things. I trust you, Lee. Please don't let me down. Don't you turn out to be a disappointment too. I can't take it. I looked in the direction she was gazing, through the cracked glass. Far in the distance, something was evaporating. It looked dark, massing on the horizon. A thin plume of smoke rose into the desolate, withered air. We sped past a faded CD3 sign, and at the same moment, Ryan stirred, waking from a nightmare. His legs twitched, his eyes snapped open. He took a deep breath, stretched, then ran his hand across his face. Lee and I silently watched him get up and climb onto a nearby seat, gripping the edge of the torn ceiling, then hoisting himself fully onto the bus roof. He sat huddled, arms crossed behind his head, face tilted up at the gloomy sky. Lee nudged my sleeve. You should go up there with him, she said, and I thought she was probably right. I walked down the aisle, doing exactly as he had, though much more clumsily, from seat to seat, then struggling to climb onto the roof. Seeing me struggling, Ryan turned and offered a hand to help pull me up. The wind whipped my hair, but it seemed a little clearer up here, at least compared to below. A little cooler. I lay down next to Ryan, both of us looking up at the bleak, orange sky. The red sun floated far in the distance. This place used to be beautiful, he finally said softly. In Axis Mundi, I caught glimpses through the eyes of the operators. I got a taste of their ideas, lost but beautiful. Yes, look, something appeared to our right beyond the black sand. A gigantic, enormous wheel, half buried in the wasteland. As the bus passed, faint red lights flickered on and off on its rim. Look at that thing. What do you think it used to be? What was its purpose? Perhaps it's the only remaining fragment of something much larger, a marvelous machine. How big is this place anyway? He sighed. I don't understand the true nature of this world, but it certainly wasn't malicious originally. The machines now call this place Yomi. Perhaps a cruel joke from the programmers, or they invented it themselves. I don't know, nor do I know which is more concerning. I gathered my courage and asked Ryan something I had been afraid to ask. Ryan, at the very beginning, when the alarm rang on the bus, there was a sleeping girl. We couldn't stop the machines from taking her. Do you know what will happen to her? He looked at me, then shook his head. The first test. I've been on this bus many times, yes. Sometimes there are sleeping passengers, sometimes not. I don't know why, but I know the first test is incredibly important. I was silent. Not the answer I expected, but at least he didn't say she would be torn apart by bloodthirsty machines. I think I once saw a sleeping person in Axis Mundi, he continued. A sleeping human behind broken glass, but I'm not sure. I searched and searched, but found no trace. How did you get off the bus, Ryan? Did you jump? Are you okay? The bus slows down a lot. I've jumped many times, yes. But remember, yes, the bus stops at Axis Mundi. It will stop for a moment, it stops. It stops, I was stunned. Yes, but if you get off, you have to get back before it leaves. If you're late, you miss it completely. Yes, it doesn't wait for anyone, doesn't turn back. You have to stand there and wait until another trip comes, and you don't know how long that will be. I had countless more questions. I wanted him to tell me about what he found in Axis Mundi, about Christy, the girl he loved enough to propose to, about his theories, his ideas on how he planned to resolve the age difference when he returned, and how he intended to live a normal life after all these years in this godforsaken place. But I had to postpone them because at that moment, the bell rang, making my stomach churn with dread. I knew if I looked down, I'd see the orange light on the ceiling blazing. I couldn't hear the distorted speaker from the roof, but I was sure it was squawking below. Damn it, Ryan sprang to his feet looking around. The landmark I used last time, Where is it? Damn it, I should have been prepared. He yelled down to Lee. Lee, are you ready? Don't move, absolutely don't move, don't talk, don't react. He turned to me. You can go downstairs if you want. Probably still time, or stay up here, just stay still. Understand? This test focuses on movement. Don't move until I tell you, understand? Okay, I'll stay. I won't mess it up this time, I promise. He gave a strained, painful-sounding smile, then gently punched my arm. You didn't mess anything up. You're much better than you think you are. A pang of guilt surged through me. I'm sorry for the fight, I blurted out. The fight that started everything. I regret what I said. You know I didn't mean to hurt you, right? I always thought you were special. He cut me off gently. It's okay, yes, I'm sorry too. The bigger fault is mine. I truly regret it. I hope one day you can forgive me. But now, he put his finger to his lips, leaning back bravely. Don't move. Be steady, okay? Okay, I will. At first, I trembled. There was a low hum in the wind, and a terrible fear gradually rose. But I focused, gathering all my willpower, forcing myself to remain motionless, silent, lying on the roof of this bizarre bus. The hum grew louder and louder, then echoed with the sound of shattering glass below. Lee, but I didn't move. My gaze remained fixed on the sky. Something glinted in the corner of my eye. It was very close, very angry. It was a mechanical wasp, almost human-sized, made of scratched, gray-black metal. Its front body extended into a metal cage like a human face, eyeless, with a grotesque smile instead of a stinger. Its rusted abdomen had a huge scythe, like a grim reaper's. It hovered directly over my chest, its insane hum buzzing around my ears. Then a second one flew into view, hovering behind its companion, moving back and forth. Yes, a voice whispered. My brother's, I thought, and I almost turned, almost spun around to see what he needed, but it wasn't him. The sound came from above, not beside. It was an illusion, the wasp's trap, so I lay still, cold sweat breaking out, my heart pounding madly. Despite them buzzing around, just do it, yes, turn to me for help. If you can't endure it, it's okay. You've been strong for too long. Let someone else help you. Have you forgotten how to rely on others? It wasn't him, I reminded myself. A deceiving voice. Don't fall for the trap. The large wasp descended closer. I could clearly see the Japanese characters and serial numbers on its chest armor. DELON 720. Gears inside ground, and amidst the mechanism, a grotesquely humanoid arm suddenly extended, its metal fingers inches from my face. You won't get me, old man. I won't move. I won't. For a long, agonizing minute, the black metal monster hovered there, dark against the orange sky, watching. Then, thankfully, it retreated. My eyes welled up with hope. It's over, asterisk, I thought. I passed. We did it. But the wasp above my head reoriented itself. At the edge of my vision, it drifted towards my brother, its sharp scythe gleaming in the twilight, and it descended with a striking blow and a horrifying scream. Ryan, I cried in alarm, sitting up and lunging towards him, my heart pounding like a hammer. But Ryan was fine except for his eyes dazed with surprise. His body was intact. The wasp scythe hadn't stabbed him, it had just grazed the roof floor next to him. That scream was just a lure, and I realized again that I had failed. The wasp's eyeless socket spun around to face me. Gotcha, it seemed to say. And now, hell exploded with a speed I hadn't expected. Ryan moved with incredible agility, springing to his feet instantly, his silver-buckled pouch and cross flashing in the sun. He didn't give me time to think. The gun was already in his hand. His tattered brown cloak whipped in the wind, settling over the dusty road behind him, and his eyes blazed with resolute determination as he cocked the hammer and fired at the wasp charging towards me. It took a direct hit to the head, then another tore through its chest, making it explode in flames, oil spilling onto the road. The remaining wasps turned to attack Ryan. I could help. I had the magnet blade hanging from my belt. Don't move, he roared like thunder as the wasps swarmed down, their shadows dark. Bang, 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 every bullet hit its mark. The wasp spun and fell in all directions. One hit the side of the bus with a small thud, taking a piece of glass with it, then was crushed by the wheels, screaming. Ryan's magnet blade attracted two wasps together. He pressed the tip of the weapon into the head of one that landed, then swung it around to knock the second one away. The collision sent another shower of sparks. Both spun and fell into the wasteland, joining the pitiful pile of wreckage. One left. I saw it, pitch black, hovering like a mechanical demon, clinging to the air just out of Ryan's sight in the corner. Suddenly, he and I both heard a faint woman's whisper. "Why did you abandon me, Ryan? You know I would never abandon you." The voice made my heart sink. He turned, searching for the indistinct figure, and the wasp's scythe plunged straight down, piercing him from back to chest. Time seemed to slow as I looked down at the blood-soaked iron blade impaling his body. The wasp's hum grew more frantic. Its wings were chipped, but it didn't care. It clung tightly to its prize. The gun slipped from Ryan's hand, spinning in midair, flying over the edge of the bus, then vanishing. "Yes," he murmured, his eyes darkening. He tried to say something, seemingly about the first test, but the words caught in his throat, and with the wasp he collapsed like a lifeless body. He rolled off the bus roof. I could only stare, helplessly watching the life leave his body. Both fell onto the dusty road, a burst of flames accompanied by black oil and dark red blood, and I could only watch. I watched my brother disappear from sight. His long journey had finally come to an end, shattered on the roadside. Part 9. It's my fault. That thought clung to my mind, imprisoning it with iron pincers for the next hour, or perhaps longer, I don't know. In truth, I don't remember much of the moments after Ryan was killed. I only remember sitting there, waiting for the illusion to dissipate, waiting for his death to be revealed as merely a trick, but no. There was no illusion, no trickery. I was useless. He died because of me. It was all my fault. I collapsed onto Lee's shoulder, sobbing. I must have cried for quite a while, but she began to speak to me, trying to soothe and lighten my remorse. "Yes, I don't think Ryan ever truly intended to return. Don't blame yourself like that. Think about how he spoke. He kept talking about taking us home, but he never included himself. His death isn't your fault. You two were deceived. I saw everything. I'm truly, truly sorry." At some point, the bus passed a roadside cross made of two crudely joined metal bars. It stood alone in the sand. "How are we going to manage now?" I sobbed. "What chance do we have without him? We've come this far, we can do it just a little further. Remember what Ryan said? We just go past Axis Mundi, then home, I guess. When the map ends, we'll be home." Ryan's words echoed in me. I reminded myself his plan was simple. Complete what he failed before, get you two to the end of the road, and make sure the bus takes the right path, the path that leads us home. "The right road home," I whispered, a cold torment running through my veins. Time passed. The desert sand blurred past. I slowly regained my composure, though still in pain. I clung to a lingering spark of hope, a belief that I would still see my brother somehow. I knew he was still out there somewhere, waiting for me. This time, he wouldn't have to be alone on some horrible train journey to find me again. I would definitely return. When I was sufficiently lucid, most of the remaining journey was spent anxiously watching the light at the front of the bus, on the remnants of the roof, which remained silent as if mocking me. But it didn't flash. It didn't hum throughout the journey across the jagged, almost invisible landscape of City 3, and then for miles of sand. It remained eerily silent, as if teasing me. This silence was time I could have spent with Ryan, peaceful, undisturbed moments. Gradually, I saw shapes looming in the distance, blurry at the horizon's edge. They grew clearer as the bus sped on. We passed another gigantic wheel, just like Ryan had pointed out to me, except this time there were no flickering lights. We encountered many similar strange things. Near the edge of the road, there was a metal carcass like a colossal rhinoceros, dormant and covered in sand. We passed a cluster of makeshift scrap metal shacks among the sand, in the shadow of a rusted billboard. And out there, in the distance, on the desert flank, a huge creature lumbered, similar to the one I'd seen right after leaving the tunnel. It lumbered somewhere, ignoring the bus, following its own path. Dark masses rose, blocking the road ahead, growing closer and closer, reaching high as if piercing the sky. This seemed to be the closest thing to a city since we'd arrived in this strange place. "We're here," Lee whispered. "Axis Mundi." A faded sign on a crumbling wall confirmed it. The bus rolled on. "Ryan said the bus would stop here," I said to Lee, looking around at the most magnificent scene since the oil sea. "He said the bus would stop for a while at Axis Mundi. We can get off and walk around." "What if we actually get off?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, "but he said the bus might leave if we don't get back in time." Lee was silent. The burnt-out skeletons of structures whizzed past. It was hard to guess what they once were, but the deeper we went, the more intact the architecture seemed. They formed a labyrinth, connected by sky bridges and walkways like a colossal neural network, all made of dark, once gleaming metal. Oh, the bus approached a huge, incredibly complex metal tree. It had two trunks, one on each side of the road, converging to form an arch, then spreading its ancient, massive branches. Its body consisted of metal plates, conduits, countless gears, and the tips of its branches held intricately carved black iron leaves. Furthermore, it looked wet, and on closer inspection, the sap was slowly dripping oil. Flickering lights ran along its trunk. It was magnificent. And what happened next was no less spectacular. The bell at the front of the bus suddenly rang out, long and loud. The light came on, that familiar, unsettling orange glow. The speaker softly wailed distorted, chaotic sounds. My skin crawled. Lee and I both tensed, waiting, watching, but nothing rushed out. Instead, the bus did exactly as Ryan had said. For the first time since this terrifying journey began, it slowed down, clearly aiming to stop completely. The engine droned as the driver shifted gears, the machine hummed, and the bus gradually pulled over. My heart pounded, and with a final hiss, the bus stopped. Silent, truly silent. I had to admit, not moving anymore was disorienting. Lee, then the driver stood up. He looked back into the cabin, his exposed wire knuckles still sparking, a half-ring of light flickering in his ocular lens. Then he pulled the door lever and stepped down the steps onto the dusty, desolate sands of Axis Mundi. Lee and I exchanged glances, then cautiously followed, peering from the doorway. "He's recharging the bus," I whispered, and indeed the driver was silently pulling a thick cable from a roadside pump, sliding open a panel on the side of the bus, plugging in the cable, then taking a smaller wire and attaching it directly below an electronic speaker. From the pump, a voice suddenly crackled, less distorted than the bus's speaker, but speaking Japanese. I didn't understand. I only noticed a cracked screen on the pump displaying time. I stepped onto the road, the feeling underfoot was strange. Lee followed. The screen showed 3:59:57, then counted down, 3:59:56, 3:59:55, 3:59:54. The meaning was clear. 4 hours, I said, turning to Lee. We have 4 hours for the bus to recharge, 4 hours before it leaves the station. Do you think we should risk it? Yes, it's a huge risk. Honestly, I feel like I should just stay put. But another part of me reminded me Ryan explored this place. He learned its secrets. He saw documents about the operators. Or should we explore a bit? We still have the magnets. Maybe we can find more clues. And even more than that, I really wanted to feel closer to my brother, to walk the path he had walked, to see the world he had seen. It was strange, but I couldn't bring myself to tell Lee. "Yes, Ryan told you to leave the bus, didn't he? Or was it just that? We can't guess what's out there. We should stay here. If the bus leaves early, we might never catch another trip." I frowned. I was bad at arguments, and Lee wasn't wrong. And usually I would never choose the risky option. I was about to back down to stay safely on the bus when a dead screen, loosely attached to a building, suddenly flickered on. Only for an instant, but long enough for us to see the scene playing on it. It was her, the young girl from the beginning. She was sleeping, the one taken from the bus, still fast asleep. A mechanical hand gently stroked her cheek. A faint blue light gleamed on her face. Then the screen statusied. I spun around to Lee. "Did you see that? Did you see it?" Her eyes confirmed it. This could be our chance, Lee. A chance to right our wrongs. Medat, Ryan both spoke of the importance of the first test. Maybe we failed, but... I stammered, excited and trembling. "But she's still alive. We can save her. Maybe this is what will put the bus on the right route. Maybe it's a trap." I didn't voice that thought because I didn't want it to become real. Lee bit her lip. She noticed my reasoning but hesitated. I grabbed her hand. "Lee, come on, please. We can still save her." She looked straight into my eyes, her gaze piercing, searching. "I just need to know one thing, yes, okay," she said. "Just one thing before we risk it. Please answer honestly. Do you think we need to do this for the bus to go the right way?" My heart pounded. "But we don't know that. Suppose we don't need to save the girl to get home safely. Would you still want to go find her, yes?" The question made me silent for a few seconds. I glanced at the screen, now dark again, but I knew my answer. Perhaps I wouldn't have said it before, but now I affirmed it. She nodded. "Okay, we'll do it." And so we set off, filled with determination, an invisible clock ticking in our heads. We left the familiar bus, stepping into the strange, hazy world. The road beneath our feet felt odd, each step kicking up fine dust, tiny orange streaks swirling in the endless twilight air. On either side of the colossal metal tree's base were two identical buildings, facing each other across the road. The roof of the left building had collapsed, while the other still stood. It was also on our side, so we entered it. The automatic door was jammed. We had to push and squeeze through the gap to step inside a cold, gray hall. It was probably white once. Axis Mundi Dome Complex, printed on the wall in black letters. Above a curved counter in the far corner, Japanese signs were cracked everywhere. A pile of broken screens, only one flickering with life, casting a blurred, faded color under the text on the wall. 2 corridors branched off behind the counter. A door was on the left. "What are we looking for, yes?" Lee asked softly. "How do we know which way to go?" "Ryan was here," I replied, my eyes darting between the paths. "He got off at this station and he found documents. Documents with information. What would he do? Where would he go?" My instinct told me to choose the right corridor. I urged Lee to follow. The complex was deserted. Precious time was ticking. We turned down one corridor after another. Sometimes they opened into large, high-ceiling chambers, sparkling with dormant equipment on the walls. Plaques with Japanese text and fragmented, cryptic English lines. Hub, Prince's theory. Theory. At first glance, it seemed useful, but if we followed the path correctly, it only led into another desolate corridor. A row of locked filing cabinets. Another dusty window, orange light flickering. Sometimes the walls were covered in black spray paint, Kegir-kuni, and countless other lines relating to operators. The operators have turned away. The operators have forgotten their place. Below a flickering light, I saw PAM 2710. I suddenly stopped, filled with irrational frustration. This place was too big. We're just wandering around, getting nowhere, yes. "Should we go back to the bus?" Lee suggested. "Not yet, no, we have to help her. I believe we can." Lee stroked her chin, looking around. Okay, then let's follow these drawings. Ignore the signs. Do you see these markings here? They look like arrows, don't they?" I followed the lines of black oil, tracing the path. Yes, some of them are definitely arrows, pointing deeper into the darkness. The biggest one, the Hearth of Yomi. An arrow pointed towards a dark, dark corridor. We looked at each other, then decided to go. Hearth of Yomi. What other reason was there to choose? So we ran up wide, winding staircases, through broken escalators, across bridges between peeling walls. Through a tunnel-like walkway, a flash of white light outside the window made me stop. We both turned to look. Below, next to the gray-black building, a white metal tower rose high. I'd seen scattered white metal fragments in the wasteland before, but never so much. It stood out against the desolate landscape. The sand around the tower's base was cleared, forming a large, empty circle. The light reflecting off its white surface. I saw a name carved into the wall behind it, deeply etched in large letters. CHRISTY. My heart ached, a pang of emotion. This was the place Ryan had built in the midst of nowhere, all alone. I swallowed hard, trying not to let the tears fall. We continued across the bridge after pushing open a door with rusty hinges. We entered a large, circular, dark hall. No windows, but there was some artificial light. A faint blue light flickered along the wall panels. "Blue light," I whispered, breathing heavily, remembering the image of the sleeping girl. We must be getting close. "Lee, eat at the hearth, eat the fruit of knowledge for the truth." The slogan was painted in large, black letters on a shimmering glass panel. There was only one other way out here. "Come on," Lee urged, intending to cross the room. "Wait, Lee, look," I said, as a touch-sensitive panel crossed my path. It was larger than the others, attached to a column near the center. I waved my hand in front of it. It shimmered like a calm blue water surface, a stark contrast to the dazzling orange outside in the desert. "Yes, quick, we don't have much time." She was right, absolutely right. I understood her impatience, but as I tentatively touched it with my finger, it flashed brighter. A deep, electronic hum vibrated through the room. The blue shimmer intensified, then a large hologram screen appeared in the space to my left. Wow, the screen projected some kind of document, with Japanese text as the title and English content. A list of names. I turned slightly. Instantly, many other files overlaid, obscuring the image, charts, 2D clips, and 3D experimental models. I rotated my hand and the document enlarged. I twisted my wrist and it scrolled rapidly through heaps of files. Lee's eyes widened, watching. I tried to keep my hand steady. The screen stopped on an image of a beautiful lake, high-definition graphics, seemingly a design. We watched. A clear Japanese woman's voice echoed from somewhere, describing in her native tongue as a 3D animated boat glided across the water, ripples swirling around its hull. Then an English word appeared in the middle of the image. Livia, then. The word floated as the lake water began to rise, forming a continuous, raining, towering blue wall around the boat. No panic here, no anxiety, just serenity. Another English phrase appeared to the right, a male American voice speaking as the Japanese woman's voice paused. Process trauma, visualize, work through your problems in a way that will see you come out the other side of the wall stronger and freer. The water wall glowed with a series of images, a beautiful light show. The camera zoomed in on a 3D man in the boat. We saw his memories appear on the wall. He looked at them for a moment, then turned to the camera, giving a thumbs up. A green checkmark appeared. The wall opened into an arch. The boat passed through unhindered. Classical music played, clearly composed to be elegant, but in this context, it sounded chilling. I shivered. In the dark blue room, the video continued. The camera suddenly looked up for a panoramic view of the lake. The colorful 3D rendering disappeared, replaced by complex technical drawings, then zoomed in, revealing a colossal mechanism beneath the water's surface. Not a monster, not a twisted mutation, just a mass of inert machinery, arcs, rotating gears, and glass. Leviathan. Forgetting I was controlling it, I raised my hand to my face, and the screen accidentally flipped rapidly through hundreds of other files before I could stop it. It landed on a basic information page. Title: Operators Prime. Next to it, in Japanese, Sure Can. It was a list of names, most crossed out in red with a data string: E. Nasan TRX, Y. Miyazawa TRX, H.L. Hiranuma. Some had a green slash, Isara Okada. The names continued, meaningless to me. I scrolled the screen away. The general rule was still too fast to grasp everything, except that there was no orange sky, no corrupted land. They were filled with the green of plants, pure white, and deep blue water. What happened to this world? I whispered, stunned, pulling on my sleeve. Please, yes, we have to go now, she said. She was right. I pulled my hand back. The screen faded with one last glance behind us. We left the room, rushing down the only corridor, plunging into darkness. The tunnel stretched, simple and empty. A flickering light at the end of the corridor led the way. Our footsteps, our breaths echoed loudly in the eerie silence. The invisible clock silently counted down in my head. The final door opened into a vast, spacious chamber. In the center was a large staircase leading up to a high, blue-lit platform. To the left, blurred writing stretched across a faded, peeling billboard. Yomi kind awaken the souls that pass the first test can be taken their stock is pure take their place and leave them behind. I swallowed hard, taking in the chilling warning. That sounds awful, I whispered. She gave a strained smile. Lee didn't smile back, she was pale. Take their place and leave them behind, I read softly, the phrase echoing in the space. This must be what it wanted to tell me before he fell. He said it was important, so failing that test might actually be a good thing, I mumbled. Yes, she replied softly. We stepped onto the stairs. I had a clear premonition deep down that, for better or worse, the answers awaited us at the top. Part 10. We silently ascended the stairs, our breaths growing heavier as we neared the top. A set of double doors finally blocked our path. Without a word, we drew our magnet weapons, Ryan's parting gift. I couldn't believe I was doing this. Every second, every step, I expected the pressure to crush me, for my legs to give out, for my will to crumble and turn back down to the dark chamber, back to the familiar bus. But it didn't happen. I just kept moving forward, unable to stop. A faint blue light shone through the cracks in the doors. A deep hum vibrated through the floor. We exchanged one last look, tensed, then pushed the doors open, bursting inside. No time for hesitation. Inside, a large, windowless hall appeared. The main light source was a colossal, wall-mounted screen far overhead. It was cracked, peeling, speckled with dead pixels. The screen flickered and buzzed, but the text and images were still clear enough. New Eden appeared in white on a blue background. Below it was Japanese text, and along the side, too. In the center was a drawing of a tree with two trunks, laden with fruit. Horizontal Japanese text faded, giving way to the English phrase, "May the road rise up to meet you." It held this phrase for a moment, then switched back to Japanese. On the wall, scrawled in black paint, was the word, the hearth. I wasn't sure if it meant a fireplace or the center, and directly in front was a low, long table. The table was piled with fruit I'd never seen before. At a glance, they looked like prehistoric fruits, but the strange blue light made them look unsettlingly artificial. One fruit lay on the floor, the rest were piled along the table's surface. Around the table were rows of light columns, pale blue, cylindrical beams of light shining from circular holes in the high ceiling. Within the light, holograms of 13 people floated, some male, some female, mostly Asian, some Western. They watched each other intently, seemingly ignoring our arrival, but the room vibrated with a simmering, expectant energy. My heart pounded with fear. What would Ryan do? I took a step forward, my hand gripping the magnet blade tightly. One of the figures around the table moved. Its head twitched slightly. Its eyes opened wide, but it didn't turn to me. "Welcome, daughter, you have returned. It has been a long time. I see you have brought another." "I'm not your daughter," I replied dryly, trying to suppress the panic rising in my chest. "Who are you? Are you the operators?" "The operators have turned away," the group chanted in unison. "The operators have failed." A chill ran down my spine. "This one seeks the truth," one said. "She is welcome," another replied. "Eat the fruit, girl," one said. "Eat the fruit of the tree, the fruit of the hearth of Yomi." The hologram figure at the head of the table spoke, dim blue light beneath his eyes. "Eden has fallen," the crowd murmured. I looked down at the pile of strange fruit covering the table. I picked up the fallen fruit from the floor. The air in the room changed. All those holograms twitched. They never looked directly into my eyes, but I clearly felt their hunger for me as I hovered. The light intensified slightly as Lee gripped my hand. "Yes," she whispered urgently. "What are you doing? Don't eat that, you can't." I wasn't going to eat it. I was just trying to see the reaction and nature of the beings around the table. Never in my life had I felt so close to death. The feeling had accumulated since I woke up on the bus, and I didn't want to die like a weak coward, begging for mercy. "Where is the girl?" I demanded, mimicking Ryan's cold, resolute demeanor. "The sleeping girl who was dragged off the bus. I know she's here. Where is she?" "Eat the fruit, girl," the head hologram repeated. "Eat the fruit of the tree, the fruit of the hearth of." I didn't wait for it to finish speaking again. Instead, I did what was perhaps the most reckless thing I'd done since entering this distorted world. I did it immediately, before hesitation could make me falter. I raised the magnet blade, lunged forward quickly, growling softly, and slammed it directly into the head of the nearest hologram. It sparked, shrieking, the sound echoing from all four walls. The blue lights on each column flickered wildly, dimmed, then went out completely. The deep hum in the floor and walls suddenly grew louder. "Yes," Lee yelled beside me, and with the sound of gears turning somewhere, the holograms dissolved. The only remaining light was the large screen on the wall, revealing the true forms of those sitting around the table. Of course, they weren't human. In their places were groups of dark, grotesque machines, horrifying, as if someone had given human blueprints to someone who had never seen a human, and then forced them to construct it using only piles of oily scrap metal and dead mechanical debris. Some were missing limbs, some had too many. A few had eyes made of flickering glass circles. A few were empty. "Where is she?" I yelled again. "I didn't come all this way to hear your cheap tricks. No more ambiguity. Tell me where she is." The machines stirred, displeased. I ripped the magnet from the head of the machine I'd struck. It twitched, then crashed to the floor. The head machine at the table turned to look, all of them now looking. It raised its arm with a groan. "My daughter, what are you doing? Why have you let things come to this? You have been on that old bus for too long, too long. You enabled others. You failed all the tests." "I don't understand, failed all the tests," I said. The group repeated. Electrical currents in the hall crackled violently, sounding hostile. "Stand still," I warned. "If you want to kill me, do it, but I'll take as many of you down with me. Don't make a move. Tell me where the girl is, quickly." The head machine clenched its fist, frighteningly human-like. Chains clanked against its lower jaw. "Our children take the sleeping ones to the towers," it replied, its voice deep and hoarse. The large screen vibrated. Lee, to my surprise, stepped forward. Which towers has she got eyes on?" Its eyes left me and moved to her. Disappointingly, it said, it knew her name. Which towers? Lee pressed. The tallest tower by this road, where else? The machine's voice was cold, laced with resignation. Lee grabbed my arm, pulling me away. We ran again. Lee, I panted as we left the fading blue light behind. How do you know the way? It's been a long time, she whispered, but I can't forget the way to the tallest tower. Lee ran, and we ran up more stairs across a steep overpass. Here there was a glass frame. I saw the tower. It must be it. It looked taller than the other buildings, soaring straight up into the gloomy orange sky. But my legs, my lungs, Lee, I'm almost there. We'll save her, yes, I promise. More stairs, more climbing. My lungs burned, then we pushed open the final double doors in this ruined place. I stumbled, gasping for heavy breaths. Lee was also tired but stood steadier. We both looked at those present in the final room of Axis Mundi. A section of the tower roof was broken, the gloomy orange sky visible through a cracked, blackened wall. In the distance, a shimmering white-blue energy screen pressed against the wall. A six-legged, eyeless machine had just slipped through the water, joining us. I counted about 8 machines in the room, circling the sleeping girl, the girl who had been taken from the bus. Her clothes were dusty, but she seemed unharmed. This time, Lee stepped forward while I was still composing myself. How much time do we have now? I worried. Was this a mistake? Even though we found her, would we not make it back to the bus in time after all? Let her go, Lee's voice was sharp, her shoulders squared. Let her continue her journey. The machines pressed closer to the girl, forming a defensive circle, giving me the distinct impression I was witnessing something ancient and powerful, though I didn't know why. Lee, who are you really? The machine at the head of the circle spoke, its face blank, mouthless. Must we repeat this game forever, Lee? Time after time? If no one accompanies you, the loop will break. You will return to where you belong, no better than us. Don't pretend. You have betrayed your parents and ancestors with your heretical thinking. You are a traitor. The girl will stay here until your bus leaves. We have a mission for our world, just as you once did. Lee's voice was icy. There's too little time. The bus is still running. Lee, why do you cling to the past? Eden has fallen. Embrace our Yomi. Return to our family. We welcome you. I can be the most. Then, with a tone I hadn't expected, quiet, gentle, pleading, it said, please. But Lee replied with a scream. She swung her magnet like a sword. I saw 2 machines attracted and stuck together. They crashed their heads, and Lee began to spin like a madwoman, the blade flashing so fast I could barely follow, hacking apart the machines, showering them with bright yellow sparks. Some shrieked angrily. They charged in retaliation, and I tried my best to support her. I stomped my feet repeatedly, shifting my weight, trying to handle the weapon like my brother. I ignored the deep scratch running down my arm, though I knew it would hurt terribly later. My eyes burned from the sparks and metal fragments. My ears rang from the crackling and grinding sounds, but we didn't stop. And one by one, the machines retreated. 5 lay inert, twitching on the floor. The remaining 3 quickly retreated to the wall behind the white-blue screen. We will not give up, Lee, the last one warned, its iron finger pointing threateningly. The loop will break. Your kind no longer has a place here. With that, it vanished, leaving us panting and exhausted with the girl still sleeping in the room. Damn it, Lee clutched her arm, wincing. I was frantic, trying to piece things together. I struggled to utter a few words. Lee, are you okay? I breathed, my voice broken. She pulled up her sleeve, nodding without speaking. We turned to the sleeping girl, the one we had come to find, the reason we left the bus. We found her, we really found her, rescued her. Only I don't think we'll make it back to the bus in time, I whispered. How much time do we have? 30 minutes? 20? How will we carry her all that way? No way, we can't, it's over, I said, my voice sinking. Not quite yet, a booming voice suddenly said. We flinched, looking up. On the shattered edge of the ceiling, silhouetted against the orange sky, was a familiar 4-winged figure. One of its eyes was pitch black, cracked, sparking dangerously in the darkness of its head, while the other eye glowed intensely, a pure white circle. With a series of piston hisses and grinding sounds, its jaw opened wide, then retracted completely, revealing another, more flexible jaw, a series of rusted iron chains stretching the inner jaw into a terrifying smile. Medat, the word carved on its chest armor. Medat, I screamed, raising my magnet instantly, ignoring the terrible ache in my arm. Stay back, leave us alone. If we did that, little yes, how would I carry you back to the bus? The corners of its inner jaw stretched wide. My heart pounded, my head felt like it would explode. Too much was crashing down right now. I just wanted to go home. I just wanted to go home. Why are you doing this, Medat? I asked. Is this a final trick? No trick, friend. You have yet to understand this ex machina, yes. I didn't reply, but Medat seemed to find its statement amusing. It gave a dry chuckle, or what I assumed was a chuckle, a low, wet, hissing sound. You must decide whether to miss your escape or allow me to take you back to the bus. I don't much care for either option, but truthfully, I am quite fascinated by your journey. It looked up, its neck cracking, its living eye flashing. You've also had quite the challenging encounters, haven't you, Lee? I would be most disappointed if you missed your moment to choose after all this. Your moment to choose. I turned to Lee, the stranger from the beginning. She met my gaze with a sad smile. Whatever you decide, yes, she said. Of course, I replied. I looked at the mechanical monster perched on the broken wall. I'm tired. Take us back to the bus. And if you're planning any kind of weird trick, my words caught in my throat, just get it over with. Medat climbed down to the hall with a rumble, using the third arm protruding from its chest to gently lift the sleeping girl. Then it used its other arms to grab us. I couldn't help but scream as it lifted me from the floor, clinging to the crumbling wall. Then 4 wings spread from its back. My stomach clenched with fear as it leaped from the edge of the tallest tower, free-falling for a moment, then catching the wind and flying amidst the poisoned sky. I slowly opened my eyes, one at a time. All of Axis Mundi, a chaotic mess, lay submerged in the windswept desert below, a silent ruin amidst the endless black sand. I briefly saw the white of Christie's memorial that Ryan had built, and piercing through everything like a sharp sword was the road, the terrifying, endless road. We thrashed in the whirlwind. The ruined buildings rushed past in reverse. Medat tilted, narrowly avoiding sharp iron walls. There was the 2-trunked iron tree dripping oil, and there was the bus, still parked in the same spot, waiting for us to return. Keeping its word, Medat slowed down. The ground came closer, then it gently descended, placing Lee and me onto the sand. I collapsed onto my knees, dusting myself off. Its third arm still cradled the girl. It bounced onto the edge of the bus, creaking loudly, screeching. We watched as it carefully placed the girl back in her seat on the bus, perhaps the very seat she had been taken from. I pushed myself up, wiping the sand, and from here, I saw the time screen on the pump displaying 15 minutes, 11 seconds. Still 15 minutes left. I didn't know what to say to this metal monster, this bizarre thing. I could only say what I thought it deserved to hear, at least for now. Thank you, Medat. Its gears still rattled. Steam hissed from its neck. Its eyes darted from me to Lee, then back to me. A part of me wondered if I found its files, would I know its former mission? Surely it had a role before this era. I am very sorry for your brother, its deep, gloomy voice said. He was, it paused for a moment. Very interesting. Then its wings unfurled, creating a hot, stifling gust of wind. It turned its face to the sky and shot off like a black arrow through the eternal twilight, tilting its wings, circling widely in the orange air, then quickly vanishing behind the buildings of Axis Mundi, and I never saw it again. Lee, still clutching her injured arm, silently stepped onto the bus. The air was heavy. The sense of relief from being saved was somewhat there, but it wasn't the joy of victory. We only felt exhausted. I was so sick of this place. I needed to see my brother. I needed to see Ryan. We were so close, I felt it. So close to returning home. New Eden or Yomi Kegerkuni. Whatever. I took a deep breath. Something was in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out, surprised. It was the fruit from the hearth of Yomi. Perhaps I had inadvertently stuffed it in without knowing. Lee looked at me through the bus window. Outside, the fruit looked fresher, no longer illuminated by that artificial blue light. I didn't understand why, but suddenly a thought possessed me, and I acted on it. I knelt by the roadside, carefully peeling the fruit. Thin juice dampened my hands, flowing into the sand, revealing several seeds inside. I took a few seeds and gently buried them in the ground, covering them, then placed the half-peeled fruit next to it. Then I wearily stood up, my knees cracking, and climbed back onto the bus. I sat near Lee. We both looked at each other in weary silence. I waited for her to speak, waited for her to tell me everything, waited for her to explain so I could understand her life story, for her to reveal her secrets. But she remained silent. The driver unplugged the cable. The engine rumbled, a familiar sound again, and with a long hiss, the bus pulled away from the curb, continuing its journey. We quickly accelerated, speeding past the ruins, driving until we left Axis Mundi and its ghosts behind in the desert. "Lee," I whispered. The wind gently rustled my hair. It also ruffled hers. She shifted her arm, still clutching her wound. Her sleeve was torn, and beneath I saw a deep scratch, a fresh wound still oozing red the last time I saw it. I saw the skin peeled back from her arm, and underneath I saw a shining metal framework, colorful wires faintly sparking, and a half ring of light like a broken halo, clearly flickering in her eye. Part 11, Final Part. Lee blinked, and the half ring of electric light immediately extinguished in her eyes. I recoiled in panic, springing to my feet in the aisle. Lee also stood up, facing me a few steps away, her face still anxious, still holding a bitter hope. Behind her was the sleeping girl, and behind me was the bus door. I glanced towards the door as the bus continued to speed across the wasteland, the distant sky hazy with heat, low, dark mountain ranges beginning to appear vaguely on the horizon ahead. "She's a machine. She's always been a machine. Why didn't you see it sooner?" It stretched its jaw wider, speaking its final words directed at me. "I am so sorry for your brother. He was very interesting." In this shattered bus, the air grew hotter and hotter. Sweat streamed down my back through the layers of dust and sand on my skin. Old and new wounds burned simultaneously as if they were being poked. My clothes were torn. My life in this twisted place, Yomi, hung by a thread. The only person who knew where to find me was dead. My brother, in some ways, was a version of him, but my soul, it had changed forever. Whatever happened next, I would never be the same person I was before. I could do it, truly. I could rush to the door, jump off the bus, like a slap in the face to this stranger who had caused me the most terrible pain. She knew I was fragile, desperate for friendship, and she exploited that. She read my thoughts. "Don't, yes," she said urgently, raising her hand. I responded by pulling the magnet blade from my belt, sweeping it in a swift arc. Maybe it wouldn't destroy her like the other machines, but it was better than nothing. It was a weapon in my hand. "Why the hell shouldn't I?" I said softly, then louder. "Give me one reason to trust you. Just one. You're a liar. You lied to me from the very beginning. From the very beginning." I was trembling with anger, my eyes welling up with tears, which only fueled my rage. To think I believed we were friends, I wanted to say that. I thought we were friends, but I couldn't utter the words. Lee pulled her hand to her chest. She was silent. "We're almost at the end, aren't we?" I said, not a question. "Yes," she replied. "You're a machine," I blurted out, "just like them." "I am a machine," she replied, "but I'm not like them." She began to shake, not the jerky movements of a malfunctioning robot, but shaking like a young girl under intense stress. A part of me wondered if Lee had ever experienced such deep emotions since she was created. "Your life," I said, my face tightening, my hand gripping the magnet blade tighter. "You don't live a few blocks from my house. No, you don't go to a different school. No, so why did my brother recognize you? He recognized you, he just couldn't remember from where, right?" "Ryan saw me, yes, on this bus. My bus. At first, I was afraid he would recognize me from somewhere, but he didn't remember." Lee tried to remain calm. I also tried to decipher her body language. Both of us were tense, the atmosphere heavy like a net covering the shattered cabin, the broken glass. "What is this world?" she continued. "He was with Christy then. That's the first time I saw her. She was very kind, yes, I'm sure you would have liked her. She genuinely wanted to meet you." I tried to swallow a sob. "You knew my brother was here, looking for me, and you didn't tell me. If I had told you your brother was in this place, you would have known I had been here before."